Today, I'm going to tell you a tragicomic story about Han Siha's life. They say reincarnation is like a wheel of fortune. You could come back as a dog, a pig, or even a cockroach crawling across the floor. So, if you're reborn as a human, consider yourself lucky. You've hit the jackpot. Long story short, Han Siha survived that fateful spin of the wheel. Compared to his previous life, where he died from overwork, this seemed much better. However, the body Han Siha was reborn into belonged to a side character in a dark fantasy novel that he used to love. More specifically, a character killed by the villain. In the very first chapter, the young man was dumbfounded to find himself reincarnated as a useless idiot, also named Han Siha. Now, let's shift our perspective to Han Siha. Han Siha is an F-rank hunter, untalented and on the verge of failure. He's deeply interested in black magic and is currently researching it. That's the reason for his tragic fate. He's just a side character. Due to his narrow-mindedness, he couldn't overcome his training and was eventually killed. In terms of ability, he's incredibly weak and has a neutral evil personality. The guy who just got reincarnated into his body is freaking out, holding his face in despair and crying, "Oh my God, why did I end up with a character like this? A brainless villain. Not only is he pathetic, but the timing of possessing this body is absolutely terrible." There are ear-piercing pig squeals all around, like the screams of Korean schoolgirls. It's like a constant background noise, making him realize that this was a branch of the Dark Witches, and the situation was extremely dangerous. In a moment, Han Siha, who was expected to be powerful due to his innate magic, but was abandoned by the academy for his lack of practical skills. A dark witch pointed at Han Siha and asked, "Who's this?" Another witch replied, "There's a kid begging to get in. He says he's from Edna Academy." Finally, the moment of misfortune arrived, when he turned to evil and sought out the dark witches. This was perhaps the most terrifying mark on his life. The witch's crimson eyes were disgusting. She thought that if he came from Edna Academy, he might be useful. "Come here," she coaxed. Han Siha gave a forced smile, his face pale with fear, knowing his life was about to be ruined. On the way, the dark witch asked him, "Do you know the initiation process?" He stammered nervously, "Why yes, of course." Of course he knew it well. After drawing the recruit's blood and swearing an oath to the dark laws, there would be no leaving this place. How could he not know this? The Dark Wizards Association that Han Siha was about to join would soon become notoriously evil, completely annihilated by the protagonists of the novel. If Han Siha sided with these dark wizards, he too would be killed by the protagonists, left in pieces. In that case, instead of just following them, he needed to find a way to escape this death trap. Suddenly shifting to Han Siha's perspective, the system began to synchronize with him. Synchronization at 10%, then 70%. Finally, synchronization complete. After synchronization, the screen flashed a bright red, warning him to escape from the dark witches. The boy jolted, his face filled with terror. The dark witch sensed something was different about him. He asked, "What was that sound? What's happening in the basement?" He said he would go check and warn Han Siha. "If you want to live, stay here." Han Siha obediently complied. Han Siha stood still, waiting for him to leave. This was his golden opportunity. He had to get out of there as fast as possible, run for his life. But Han Siha fumbled around, unsure of where the exit was. He walked slowly, panting heavily, sweat dripping down his face. "I've climbed quite high from the basement. But where's the way out?" The light grew closer. He thought he was heading in the right direction. The voices of dark witches echoed from behind him. They whispered amongst themselves, "What's going on?" One of them said, "A child just escaped from the basement." Han Siha hid in fear behind the wall. He knew they were talking about him. One dark witch said suspiciously, "He's from Eden Academy." Could he be a spy? After hearing no more sounds outside, Han Siha peeked out and saw no one. They had all vanished. He ran to the door and pushed with all his might. He strained his small body against the door covered in chains, but no matter how hard he tried, it wouldn't budge. In this situation, all he could rely on were his memories. It's something even a useless guy like Han Siha could do. I have to think of something. Actually, Han Siha had no talent for light magic, but he was born with an abundance of magical power, with an uncontrollable amount of magic. He simply couldn't figure out how to use it. In other words, in this situation, he just needs to control it. In the novel, it said, when the protagonist, Lehon, started learning magic, they told him to focus his blood flow with his fingertips. The young man in Han Sia's body tried to do what he remembered, fearfully praying, "Please, let this work." He focused all his concentration on attacking the door. It seems like it's working. There's been a little progress, but his skills are still too weak to even scratch the door. Suddenly, footsteps approach. A strange creature with glowing eyes emerges from the darkness. Han Sia thinks he's been discovered. Damn! He freezes, watching the creature approach. This is it. Wait, this thing isn't scary, it's cute. It rubs against his leg, seemingly wanting to be picked up. Sia is surprised to see it's some kind of reptile. He picks it up. It looks like a dragon, or rather, a baby dragon. But what is it doing here? Why is it so affectionate towards him? As adorable as it is, Sia can't take it with him. He can barely take care of himself. The little dragon seems to understand. Just seconds later, like a seasoned actor, its eyes welled up and it burst into tears. Han Sia, terrified, frantically tried to cover its mouth. "Oh God, does it want to get us caught? Don't you dare jinx me. Besides, I shouldn't have taken you in, if I can't even take care of you." In a moment of clarity, Han Sia suddenly realized in this situation, could he possibly utilize this creature's power? System notification. Stats have been synchronized to the owner's personality. Charm is increasing. Charm is increasing. Charm is increasing. Important things must be said thrice. Taming skill activated. Do you wish to tame the suspicious baby creature? The suspicious baby creature seems quite friendly towards you, viewing the adorable dragon's other information. This is a level 2 pet with magic power. 50, strength, 60, stamina, 35, intelligence, 10, firepower, level 1. Han Siho observed it, making a quick calculation. According to the notification, if his personality from his past life carried over, he fumbled around, looking for a button on the notification panel. Wait, shouldn't there be a button to accept or something? Why do I need to explain anything? The notification panel only displayed. Taming skill activated. Do you wish to tame the suspicious baby creature? He suddenly realized he had to say something. Something like, "I shall tame you like the main characters in novels do." For it to work, a smug grin spread across his face. Actually, when it comes to taming, I have quite a bit of experience, with a few special techniques of my own. First, establish a sense of security. Then build trust. He stroked the dragon, saying, "Trust me." Seeing no reaction, his face darkened. Did I do it wrong? Just then, the system announced a successful tame. The baby dragon glowed and floated into the air. It looked like it was activating its power. It landed back on the ground. Its innocent, adorable face looked at Han Sia. He suspected he had actually tamed it. What? That's it? He wanted to test it out. He commanded, "All right, lizard, first order, open that lock." The dragon's eyes lit up at its master's command. It charged towards the door, brimming with energy. It leaped powerfully off the ground. With a single, effortless bite, it crushed the flimsy lock, astonishing Han Sia. The rusty piece of metal was gone. Han Sia praised it satisfied. "Good job, lizard." Seeing the light peek through the crack in the door, he smiled. Now all he had to do was open this door, and his thoughts were cut short. When Han Sia heard footsteps, he'd been discovered. They were saying that a little rat was hiding in here. He was about to be caught. What the hell was going on? Dark witches were hunting Han Sia. He trembled, terrified. Han Sia was shaking like a leaf, his mind blank. They were coming for him, grabbing at him. He told himself he had to find a way out fast. He suddenly remembered the first defensive spell he learned as a freshman at the academy. The Mist spell. It was a spell that created smoke for concealment. Easy enough even for someone like Han Sia. He'd even learned magic without any innate talent. He looked at the power in his hands. He'd never tried this before. Now was the time. He focused, trying to cast the spell. After controlling his breathing, he concentrated energy into his fingertips, then imagined filling the cave with pure white smoke. He trembled as he pleaded, "Please, please work," even though he was currently possessing Han Sia's body. He cursed the damn fool internally. He'd had to clean up all of Sia's messes. He prayed to Sia for success. Finally it worked. The spell had taken effect. A thick white smoke billowed out. Sia rejoiced. He had done it. This was his chance to escape. As he snuck away, he could hear the dark witches cursing him. "You little brat, using such dirty tricks." The little dragon obediently followed him. He pushed with all his might, but the door wouldn't budge. A dark hand pulled Han Sianga back, taunting, "You think you can escape me?" The grip tightened, choking him. He gasped, collapsing to his knees, struggling to breathe. Despair washed over him. Is this the end? The dark sorcerer cackled. If you surrender now, Han Xianga, I will grant you a less painful death. Han Xianga wanted to curse. Damn, I'm gonna die anyway. What's the difference between a quick death and a slow one? He lay trembling on the ground, helpless, unable to see his opponent hidden within the smoke. There was no escaping this dark magic. Han Xianga knew it. The only variable is this dragon. It's looking at him with pained eyes. He uses his remaining strength to tell it. If you want to escape this place with me, I have to control you. I apologize for my poor taming skills, but I have no choice. The dragon is receiving his commands. Its wings are spread, ready for flight. With a roar, it lunges forward. It breathes fire, incinerating the dark witches, making them scream in terror. Hansu is overjoyed to be free from their grasp. The dark witches writhe in the inferno, clueless as to what just happened. He collapses to the ground, breathing a sigh of relief. He can't believe the dragon actually did it. After saving its master and seeing him safe, the dragon joyfully leaps, wanting to be embraced. He smiles, stroking it, and says, I owe you my life. I'll take you as promised. But first, let's get out of this cave. Han Sia and the dragon walked under the scorching sun. Their footprints were imprinted on the sand. After only a few steps, Han Siha was drenched in sweat. It felt like he had been walking through the desert for hours. But there was no one here. But it still felt better than staying in that dark witch's cave. A few more steps, and Han Siha saw a carriage in the distance. The old coachman was startled. When he heard Han Siha shout, he enthusiastically asked for a ride. The old man asked, do you have money for a ride? Han Siha frantically searched through his pockets, but he had no money. He could only pull out his Eden Academy card, asking if he could put it on his tab. The old man was stunned. I know a kid sponsored by Eden Academy might think this is all nonsense, but there's also a chance they might be willing to gamble and see what happens. I anxiously awaited the old coachman's response. To my surprise, he actually told me to get in. Overjoyed, I thanked him profusely. I carried the dragon onto the carriage. The old man asked where I wanted to go. I hesitated, completely speechless. I honestly didn't know where to go. Even if I ran, those dark witches could still find me. They wouldn't want their secrets getting out. If discovered, I'd vanish in an instant. I had no other choice. Even though many want me dead, perhaps the safest place right now, within the context of this novel, there's only one place. Han Si had told the old man, please take me to Eden Academy. A pair of endlessly long legs appeared on the school grounds. She was a second-year associate professor at Abel Academy, named Ciola. She felt a sense of satisfaction every time she saw the impressive school. The luxurious marble floors and the magnificent chandeliers, even the students' uniforms, exuded an air of dignity. Feeling incredibly elated, Ciola's face suddenly twisted into a grimace. It turned out she had seen the old man's carriage. Carrying Han Siha and the dragon arrived at the school gates. What the hell is this? Han Siha's face was pitifully dirty. He stepped out of the carriage looking, covered in dust and grime. He stepped down and brushed the dust off himself. Ciola shuddered at the sight, filled with disapproval. How could this sacred academy have such a wretched-looking student? Her face gradually darkened. She was in a daze, as if hearing the faint rumble of thunder in her ears. Han Sila removed her hood, revealing a small dragon nestled within. After watching Han, Sila disembarked from the carriage, covered in dirt and grime. Professor Helen frowned, thinking to herself, who would do such a thing, tarnishing the reputation of DNA Academy on the very first day of the semester? Ah, it's her Han Sila, the one who can't control her innate magic, and is about to be expelled. Han Sila tucked the little dragon inside her robe. It seemed uncomfortable and fidgeted constantly. Han Sila, flustered about where to put the dragon, suddenly noticed Professor Helen standing before her with arms crossed. He wondered to himself, who is that? She looks like a teacher from the academy. Han Sila stammered, am I late? Professor Helen said sternly, just this once. Then she thought to herself, if it were anyone else, I would have scolded them, but I don't have time to worry about this loser. It's not worth my time or energy, and that kid is kind of creepy. Rumor has it he practices black magic every night. With life-size dolls, something to do with necromancy. Nothing good can come from that. Finishing her thought, Professor Helen patted Han Siho on the shoulder and urged him to go to class. Han Siho smiled brightly and said, thank you, Professor. I'll be on time from now on. Professor Helen was surprised by his attitude. Well, that was surprisingly pleasant. Siha hurried into the classroom. He thought, now that it's my second year, the atmosphere feels completely different. As Siha entered the classroom, he was met with hostile stares and whispers. Siha was as gloomy as ever. Heard he arrived in a carriage today. Siha sat down at his desk and overheard the whispers around him. He silently endured it, thinking, for real. Not far away, he heard them gossiping again. He couldn't quite put his feelings into words. Why did it have to be the first day of the semester? Is he really going to drop out of the academy? At least he could show up before the professor arrives. How can he even attend class? Wasn't he supposed to have failed? He must have begged his way through. Probably Siha's family bribed someone, or some professor saw his overwhelming magical potential and wrote a recommendation letter. Well, he barely passed to the second year, so it's not wrong. Whatever. Siha ignored the gossip, focusing on his long-term plans for the future. Either way, I need to figure out how to survive in this twisted novel world. First, let's summarize my survival goals into 2 points. 1. Live peacefully here. He thought about the main storyline, Siha, a third-rate villain, both violent and incompetent, whose ending was being buried alive, brutally by the protagonists. As the academy arc progressed, the cause of Siha's death was never clarified, only that he was the villain. But that's quite concerning, since I don't know why he was killed. So, I'll live quietly and cautiously. Siha made up his mind. He'd rather endure working twice as hard than be buried alive a second time, graduate from the academy safely. Why? Because I need to make a living in this world. Siha came from a wealthy family. His antics had nearly made him an outcast. Siha painted a bright future for himself. Actually, a diploma from Eden Academy would be a more secure retirement plan. Siha daydreamed. With an Eden Academy diploma, recruiters would be groveling at his feet, begging him to work for them. I'll pay you whatever you want. Please sign with us. Eden Academy graduates were always in high demand. Instead of getting involved in the fight with the main characters and dying like in the original story, he would live as an ordinary, quiet student, avoiding all the death flags that might pop up. Siha clenched his fists with a determined look. Just then, the door opened to reveal Professor Green of the Magic Department. Everyone chorused, "Good morning, Professor." Whispers rippled through the room. Professor Green, isn't he? He's in charge of the second years, right? It's him, the professor in charge of the second year entrance exam. Professor Green from the Magic Department. I heard his exams are brutal. Even his aura is intimidating. Siha clutched his head, groaning internally. Oh, I remember now. Professor Green's exam was so difficult that even the protagonist, Lehon, struggled with. Professor Green slammed his staff, booming, silence. This year's second year seemed quite promising. I've already noticed some exceptional students. Siha smirked inwardly. That seemed obvious. Of course, all the main characters were in their second year, but a higher class level meant that survival would be even harder for Siha. His position in the academy was becoming more precarious. Eden Academy, which trained students aged 14 to 19, had a 6-year program and was known for its rigorous curriculum. This fostered intense competition among the students, turning this place into a survival arena. Only 10% will graduate with honors. Siha sighed. This is too hard. How can I possibly compete with the main characters? In the original story, Siha used black magic for rapid development. But since I've decided to live a peaceful life, that method is out of the question. Meanwhile, Professor McGonagall continued her lecture. Of course, there are also incompetent students, starting from the second year. Incompetent students will be expelled. After saying this, Professor McGonagall glanced at Siha with a meaningful look. Siha thought, did she just look at me? The professor continued. Now, I will announce the entrance exam schedule. She then tapped her staff on the ground 3 times. A holographic screen appeared before the students. Notification. Based on your expertise, please select 3 subjects for both written and practical exams. Siha exclaimed in surprise. Did he just display the announcement using illusion magic? Such a precise illusion. Is this the level of magic at Eden Academy? However, students can freely choose their exam subjects. That means anyone can choose subjects they excel at and easily pass the exam, right? There's no way Professor Green's exam would be that easy. From the start, Professor Green addressed their questions. I will now explain the subject selection process. Each subject has a limited number of spots and will be filled on a first come, first served basis. The order of subject selection will be determined by a random lottery. Hashi was speechless at this rule. Why draw lots at a magic academy? It seems so tacky. Professor Green retorted. There's nothing fairer than drawing lots. I will personally draw the balls with your names from this box to determine the order. Hashi accepted, thinking to himself, are we really going to leave this to chance? Since I know next to nothing about magic, I need to be picked as early as possible so I can choose a subject that I can at least attempt. Damn, I spent a whole year just trying to escape that dark magic dungeon. Professor Green drew a ball. He frowned slightly upon seeing the name, but announced loudly, the first student to choose a subject is Han Jiho. He held up the ball with the name and looked towards the students for everyone to see. Professor Grainer tossed the ball up and asked Han Jihan, you're Han Jihan, correct? Han Jihan quickly stood up and replied, yes. He luckily thought, yes, I got picked first. Han Jihan was quite flustered as he stood before the list of subjects. He thought, since I'm not very familiar with magic yet, I'll skip the practical subjects. I should also avoid anything related to necromancy or subjects not mentioned in the original work. Why do all these subjects look so difficult? Exploration of numerology and magic formulas. This one already sounds tough, but it's the only one I can choose. Plus, it's a theoretical subject, so if I memorize everything, I should be able to manage. While Han Jihan was making his choice, two classmates scoffed, hey, that guy picked arithmetic. Seriously? Whatever. He's just clearing the path for us. Thanks for the free points, sucker. Han Siha thought to himself, well, this kind of treatment is to be expected when you're used to being Han Siha. I need to quickly choose my other two subjects and sit down. Han Siha glanced at applied sciences and thought, wait a minute, this actually looks pretty good. At the Adel Academy Library, Han Siha thought about his past life before he died from overwork and was reincarnated into this world. I used to be a veterinarian intern. The three subjects I've chosen are pretty similar to my major back then. First, arithmetic exploration and magical formula application. It utilizes this world's unique arithmetical methods. However, I think I can apply the mathematical formulas I already know. Next up, introduction to monster anatomy, taming, and basic behavioral science. A little nerve-wracking. Just then, Han Sia's bag rustled slightly. The baby dragon tried to wiggle its way out. The baby dragon cooed. Since I brought it all the way here, Han Sia thought, I figured it might come in handy. Han Sia firmly shoved the baby dragon back into his bag. But not now. Too many eyes around. Han Sia, who hadn't even mastered his own magic yet, suddenly taming a baby dragon. It was the perfect recipe for suspicion and unwanted attention. Unnecessary. Han Sia quickly grabbed his bag, stood up, and left the library. He headed to the training dungeon, located beneath Eden Academy. He turned to the little dragon and said, all right, now you can run. Free falling. At the training dungeon, Han Sia thought, since I've grasped some of the theory, it would be better to combine it with practical taming skills. Han Sia said to the gatekeeper, give me a ticket to the beginner's training area. For beginners. The staff member, seeing a small dragon, was a bit puzzled. Ah yes, confirmed. He thought, it's just a little dragon. But who would have guessed that he'd bring a dragon into the beginner's training area? The gatekeeper asked, may I have your names? Han Sia introduced himself. I'm Han Sia, a second-year student. And this little one, what's your name? The baby dragon was also bewildered by the question. Han Sia thought, why do you look so clueless? Do you want me to name you? The baby dragon chirped, Chimera. Han Sia asked, you want a cool name, huh? Since you're a dragon. How about Ignieri? The baby dragon was speechless at the questionable name choice. He continued, how about Chaos Dragon Souse? That was the coolest name back in the day. This time, the baby dragon was actually angry. It silently raised its tiny, sharp claws, its eyes blazing. Han Sia quickly said, that one's no good either? You're so picky. Okay, how about Vicious? The baby dragon looked up at Han Sia with sparkling eyes and a wagging tail. It seemed to like this name. Han Sia thought, phew, it would be a problem if it understood. The gatekeeper said so. I'll register its name as Vicious. Each training ground holds a maximum of 2 people, and there's already 1 person inside. We also provide a weapon rental service for students. With that, the gatekeeper led Han Sia to the weapons display. Sia looked at the weapons with disdain. Ugh, these look terrible, probably because they're free. This isn't the time to be picky about weapons. I should be grateful for anything I can get. Sia chose a sword and a staff for herself. Then she shouted, I'm ready. The gatekeeper opened a magic portal. All right then. Opening gate number 1 of the beginner training grounds. Second-year students, Han Sia and Park Jinwoo entering. After stepping through the gate, Siha was stunned. Before her lay a vast, sprawling forest, filled with sunlight and fresh air. Hansila exclaimed, "No way! The quality here is insane!" Hansila and her dragon, Bashin, walked together into the forest, when they suddenly heard a rustling sound coming from the bushes. Curious, Hansila peeked into the bushes to see what it was. She saw two transparent, square-shaped jellies playfully bouncing around. Hansila thought, I guess these are slimes. Even for low-level monsters, isn't it a bit much to make them look this simple? Hansila said to the little dragon. Anyway, Bashin, do you see those square things? We're going to blow them away. Hansila said this with a dark expression. Bashin looked quite frightened. But shortly after, Hansila was left speechless. I stood there, helpless, watching Bashin rush in, frenziedly tearing into the slime. His dragon instincts are awakening. Where's the scaredy cat from before? Now he's like a fish in water. Bashin continued to gnaw at the slime enthusiastically. Meanwhile, Hansila thought since Bashin seemed fine, she should start training too. Start training. Suddenly, Hansila heard a roar in the distance, growing louder. Are you? Hansila turned around, firing a spell from her wand at the approaching slimes. What is this? There are so many. To take down these wiggling monsters in one shot, I'll need. Hansila turned to Bashin and said, Are you warmed up yet? Bashin nodded vigorously, flying to Hansila's hand, ready to attack at any moment. Let's try what we did earlier one more time. Those square things, blow them away. Bashin, with a mighty roar, exhaled a colossal stream of fire, vaporizing the slimes with a single touch. Hansila cheered. Yes, good job, Bashin. Keep up the good work. Half a day later, finally, Hansila and Bashin finished off the slime horde. Exhausted, the boy and his dragon companion collapsed. It's finally over, isn't it? Between practicing magic, constantly switching between taming and attack spells, I feel like I'm about to die. At least this little guy seems to be listening to me. I'll have to give him something tasty to eat when we get back. As he rested, another voice shouted, No, not like that. No, that's not right. Curious, Hansila sat up and went to investigate the shout. He saw a classmate struggling with their dog. She knelt down, defeated. Her dog, meanwhile, frolicked around, digging in the dirt. Stop messing around. Catch those bastards. Hansila thought to herself, is this supposed to be an AI? Adel yelled at the dog, her voice laced with impatience. Hey, stay still. Hansila sat in a corner, resting her chin on her hand. Isn't that a pig? Why are you being so mean to it? She barked, sit. Hey, where do you think you're going? She continued to shout. Get back here. Worried, she decided to go look for it. Where did it run off to? Searching, she muttered irritably. Just wait until I get my hands on you. Suddenly, she heard a voice. Good boy. Good boy, stay. Lie down, good boy. In the distance, he was playing with Bashin and the hellhound. She slowly approached them. Lost in thought, she continued walking. Could that be Hansila this year? Just then, as if sensing her presence, he spoke. Is this your hellhound? I've been watching you for a while now. But that's not how you tame a hellhound. Surprised, she blurted out, What? Hansila scratched the hellhound behind its ears, making it grin widely. You seem very agitated. If the tamer is agitated, the hellhound will become more agitated. As soon as he finished, her face paled. What, she thought, is Hansila giving me advice? At Eden Academy, the most prestigious institution in the Adel Empire, she had never ranked lower than third. Despite being a commoner and often overlooked, her natural talent was undeniable. Few could match her skills. But thanks to the random draw for the entrance exam, she recalled with a hint of embarrassment. I got stuck with my weakest subject. Basic taming shouldn't be this hard, right? I know my taming skills are still lacking. That's why I came here to practice. She continued to drift in her thoughts. But my opponent is Hansila, who couldn't even tame a slime. In his first year, as she thought, she pictured the scene in her mind. There were rumors that he was obsessed with dark magic, and I witnessed him fall into despair firsthand. She observed everything from afar, but today she was utterly astonished, exclaiming internally, What's going on? Hansila is playing with a crybore, and it even looks comfortable. At this moment, she asked, How did you do that? He slowly replied, It's simple. Then he continued, It seems to have calmed down. You could take it now. Oh, okay, she replied. She gently picked it up. Turning away, she said, Thank you. As she was about to leave, he suddenly asked, But why a hellhound? Slowly standing up, he added, It's quite difficult for a first taming. Adel quickly responded. It's a difficult monster, so it has a high score. I need to rank first in the basic taming exam. He simply replied with a tired, oh. Then he continued, I thought you liked mud baths? She almost lost it. This guy, she thought, fuming. But is Hansel always like this? She wondered aloud. She looked at him silently, Bashan by her side, thinking, he's a noble, but he talks so casually to me, a commoner. This time, she looked closely at Basin's bright smile and thought, and what's that next to him? Could it be a dragon? His child tamed a dragon at only 2 years old and brings it everywhere. Seeing him now, she was completely taken aback. The Han Siha I knew was completely different. As she walked, she wondered, what happened to Han Siha? But maybe this is good. I could learn a few tricks on how to tame Heo Huk. Finally, after a moment of contemplation, she spoke. This is where you used to live, right? Hearing her question, he simply replied, yeah. Looks like it's regenerated after nearly being destroyed. Adel raised her sword and said, so this is the training ground. Look, one-hit KO. Then, she showed off her special move. The slimes in front of her aggressively charged. With swift and precise movements, she knocked them away. With just one blow, she sent it crashing to the ground, creating a long fissure. Han Shia, standing beside her, was impressed. Extraordinary. He suddenly asked, do you like burying things alive? She was a little irritated now, but tried to restrain herself as she replied, want me to bury you with them? Suddenly she froze, her eyes widening. Slime splattered into the air. He, standing beside her, sprang into action. Calmly, he told her, it's coming from behind. Slightly annoyed, she said, of course I know that. Then they both moved. As they ran, he said, really? Good, let's go, Bakeson. Lost in thought, she suddenly realized she didn't know something. There's a monster sneaking up from behind. The accuracy of that archery magic I just saw. It's not the work of a beginner. Who is this guy? He continues, was there always a trap like this in the dungeon? She's a bit tired, but replies, I'm not sure. Suddenly, they both stop in their tracks. They cautiously scan their surroundings. A shout rings out, Headmaster! Their images suddenly appear within an orb. Emergency magic! Emergency! There's a problem at the beginner's training ground in the dungeon. Someone slams their hand on a table. Marvel! Oh no! Is it a magic malfunction? Who's in the dungeon? Is it second year Adel? Han Sia, sir. Upon hearing the two names, he scoffs and says, this isn't good. If it were Eugene Wu, he'd probably be fine. But for Han Song-ai, it might be too late. A useless, talentless person with nothing to offer has no chance of survival in a glitched dungeon. If there's an error in the dungeon's magic formula, the monsters become abnormally stronger than the dungeon's intended level. Han Song-ai is currently facing a rather terrifying monster. Her chances of survival are practically zero. It's best to prepare for the worst. In the pitch-black darkness, a terrifying screech echoes. Screech both Eugene Wu and Han Song-ai stand back-to-back. Defensive. Suddenly she speaks. Look at those glitched slimes, all blackened and burnt. Mid-sentence, she suddenly yells, no matter how many I kill, they just keep coming. When will we get out of here? I'm never eating slime salad again. Hearing her, he scoffed. Magic with slime salad? Han Siha seemed to be muttering something to herself. Even though we were just attacked by those slimes, she's strangely calm. He watched her, continuing to mutter. Her taming skill is only basic level, but she's using high-level magic. He looked at her in awe. Could her true identity be the destined Earth mage, who will become a great Adel mage? Could she? He brought his hand to his chin, stroking it thoughtfully. No way. That ferocious Adel wouldn't be messing around in the beginner training grounds. Earth magic knights are pretty common anyway. And most importantly, unlike in the original story, she seems pretty nice, he thought to himself. Sure, she could be a bit harsh, but she didn't look down on a notorious loser like Han Suhaya. So, she must be a good person, right? Noticing his strange behavior, she asked, why are you just nodding to yourself instead of fighting? Are you slacking off? He quickly replied, it's nothing. I'm just calculating the time. She thought, he's actually kind of creepy. Han Suhyak looked up and said, if we count from the moment we entered the dungeon, it must have been over 3 hours. Why haven't we heard anything yet? Don't they know we're trapped? She spoke up. Come to think of it, only about 30 minutes have passed outside, so there's nothing they can do. They designed the time inside the dungeon to be slower than outside, so we can practice properly. As soon as she finished speaking, he thought, damn, so that's it. Then he said, So even if they figure out the situation and come to rescue us, we still have to hold out here for a few more hours. But if we have to keep holding out here, it seems impossible. Hearing him say that, Adel said angrily, "What?" She yelled at him. "Why are you saying such an unlucky thing? Do you want us to just sit here and wait to die?" "Of course not," he said, turning around and giving a bright smile. "You two just keep walking and talking. Buy me some time." "Buy you time for what?" "I'll escape. Just keep those slimes from getting any closer. It won't take long." "You want me to handle all these slimes by myself? What are you going to do in the meantime?" From behind, Adel called out, "Han Seola, can you hear me?" He flashed a sly smile. She yelled back at him, "If you can't handle this, after I've used up all my magic to buy us time, you're dead." As she ran it, he thought to himself, honestly, she's not a bad person. There's no way someone like her could be. The ruthless Adel. Suddenly, Mr. Boss spoke up, worried about him. His chip's voice reassured him. "Don't worry, I have a plan." He then stopped at a spot near the faulty dungeon disposal. It's also a part that appears in the original SKT series. This is an episode meant to highlight the difference in abilities between the protagonists, Lehon and Han Seola. In that scene, Han Shi had tried a method, but ended up failing miserably. He then parted some leaves and exclaimed, "Found it!" Han Shi continued, "Botchiness, gather all the vines that look like this, and bring them to me." Upon receiving the order, it flew off to find them. Han Shiha used this method and was cursed by the readers. He held onto it tightly for the rest of his life. But honestly, I don't think Han Shiha is that stupid. Adel stood to the side, holding a large sword in front of her. She cautiously muttered, "I can't use any more magic power. I'm reaching my limit." Yet Han Shiha was taking too long. Just as she finished speaking, he yelled, "Done!" She looked at him surprised. "What?" "A barrier," he urged. "Hey, get inside the barrier." "The method is simple. Just hurry up and do whatever you're going to do. The slimes are regenerating. Get in here quick. Build a barrier and eliminate the monsters outside." But Han Seolha overlooked two crucial points. Why he amplified the magic and cast fire. Han Seolha stood inside, a look of determination on his face. Just then, a faint, shimmering light emanated from his hand. A massive arrow materialized from thin air. He looked at it and thought, "It's working. All I need to do is imbue this arrow with fire magic." Han Seolha turned to Bashim. "Bashim," he said with a chuckle, "it's finally your turn." It cooed happily. A golden aura flickered in his eyes. The same golden aura appeared in its eyes. He signaled fire. Arrows were knocked and drawn taut. The archers released. He cast his spell with a flick of his wand. The slimes stared in disbelief. One of them cried out, "Ah!" The sky filled with blinding golden light. It shrieked in panic. She shielded her eyes from the intense glare. A thought crossed her mind. "Is this really magic from the useless Han Sia?" He said with a smug grin. "You've annihilated the slimes around here, and their remains are scattered across the ground, right? Slime venom has explosive properties when exposed to fire magic." Looking at them, he continued, "In situations like these, you just need to pour in some magic and unleash a flame, and everything after that will follow naturally." She stood to the side, also feeling regretful. "You planned for that firestorm to not reach inside this barrier, didn't you?" "That's right. These vines have a fire-resistant effect." He stood there, smiling as he spoke. "Now that we've burned everything around us, let's rest until rescue arrives." Adel thought to herself, "Of all people, Hansu Ha was the one who saved me. The nobles at Eden Academy usually don't care whether commoners like me live or die. What's his motive?" Suddenly, he felt something was off and asked her, "Why are you looking at me like that? Are you feeling a little grateful, perhaps?" Hearing him say that, she crossed her arms, looked away, and said, "I'm feeling a little bit grateful, that's all. After all, I do owe you my life." Her response pleased him. "Well, it's great that you're so grateful. Speaking of which," he turned to face her, a smile spreading across his face. "So, how about you do me a favor, slime?" He repeated, "Do me a favor." Adel, taken aback, asked, "A favor? What kind?" She closed her eyes, forcing a smile. "All right, as long as it's within my capabilities. But if it's too outlandish, I'm afraid I won't be able to help." Hajin walked ahead, calling back, "Keep it a secret, okay?" She seemed not to hear him clearly. "Huh." He glanced around, checking both sides, to make sure no one was around. then started recounting his exploits. I tamed that hellhound of yours, single-handedly defeated those pesky slimes, and even created a wall of vines. A mysterious expression crept onto his face. So, I'd appreciate it if you kept everything that happened today a secret. Adel's face darkened, his hands clenching in a fist in anger. It makes sense, I guess, but something feels off. Something's not right. Ms. Chung Kui again. Something's definitely up. What's that bastard planning? What the hell is he up to? He noticed a few green marbles in front of him. Bending down, he touched one and figured it was a slime core. The baby dragon seemed curious about the marbles as well. Suddenly, a voice said, and then, somehow, the dungeon aftermath was taken care of. Someone else said, the professor seemed pretty baffled by the dungeon malfunction. But, just then, a man and a woman ran towards them and said, they've also decided to reward the student who closed the dungeon gate without sustaining any major injuries. Curiosity piqued, he turned towards the speaker. The guy continued, they were even called to the principal's office. He leaned back into the plush sofa. The little dragon hopped down. He thought to himself, let's see. This reward could be really useful after graduation. But the important thing right now is... Suddenly, he called out to the baby dragon, Basin, come here, startling the little creature. Basin let out an adorable chirp, like a puppy called by its owner. Basin's status window appeared, a cheerful red dragon, with a passion for cheese and a friendly disposition towards him. Stats, level 5, magic power, 53, strength, 63, agility, 38, intelligence, 13, fire breath level 1. Magic resistance level 1, poison resistance level 2. I'm quite impressed with the little dragon status screen. Its fire breath skill has improved significantly, probably because it had so much fun breathing fire in the dungeon. I tap on the poison resistance section. This poison resistance seems to be a skill acquired. After encountering that error slime, I wonder to myself, I don't know what those black wizards were raising down in that dungeon, but Baeksin here isn't just some rare dragon. It was born with exceptional talent, too. I reminisce about the first time Baeksin and I met. And now, Baeksin is staring at me with a clueless expression. I continue thinking, excellent growth rate, precise breath control, powerful magic. Oh my, absolutely amazing. Truly a terrifying monster in every aspect. I recall the scene of catching Baeksin mid-flight. Then I smugly think to myself, but now it's in my hands. I have to raise it with great care. He sat on a chair, dangling the orb in his hand, and spoke to Basim. You went through a lot to get this, you know? Basim tilted his head, looking at him and letting out a confused growl. He held out an orb in front of Basim. This is the slime orb, he said excitedly to the short-haired dog. Look, he treats it like trash. But this overpowered item wasn't revealed in the early part of the novel. He said, bringing the orb closer to Basim. Will you drink it? It looks tasty. Don't you want to try it? Basim backed away, his face full of disgust. But he continued enthusiastically. What's wrong? It's really good. Try it. A bite or two won't kill you. It's delicious. Basim continued to back away, a cold snort escaping his nose. He thought to himself, of course, I haven't tried it yet either. I'd probably rather die than eat it. Basim's face fell, filled with boredom and contemplation. Then, suddenly he lunged forward. It chomped down hard on the orb in his hand. Basin froze after swallowing it. Then it turned away to vomit it back up, because it was disgusting. He worriedly thought it must have tasted awful. Well, anyway, he looked at Basin's stat sheet, happy to see that its stats had dramatically changed. He watched as Basin glowed with a golden light. He said smugly, see? It really increased. Level 5, magic power 55, strength 63, agility 38, intelligence 13, poison resistance. Everything leveled up. He looked at the bag filled with blue orbs. Slime orbs are items that enhance the consumer's stats. They focus on the inherent abilities of slimes. Even just one orb greatly increased magic power, which normally takes a long time to develop. It must have realized its own change, right? Basin looked at him and thought. It rushed towards the bag of orbs. I have to eat them. Yeah. It devoured one after another. The instinct to become stronger had surpassed even its own desires. Then, the baby dragon's energy gauge kept beeping incessantly. He sat there, basking in the sound of his stats increasing. The sound was so satisfying, like the cha-ching of a bank account getting paid. A knock came from the door, pulling him away from the pleasant sound. Was that someone knocking? Before he could answer or open the door, Adel barged in with an irritated expression, yelling, Han Songshur, as if possessed. Her face suddenly softened, her cheeks flushed as she said, "Oh, there you are." He looked at her suspiciously. That short-haired girl? She's here because she was also summoned to the principal's office to receive a SAO. She blurted out, "Are you really not noticing this? Are you letting me take all the credit?" Ugh, because they heard I took care of those slimes all by myself. I'm gonna get way more rewards than you. Sounds pretty good, right? He chuckled, scratching his head. "Oh, I was wondering why you came running here." "Never mind. Can you keep your voice down? You're hurting my ears." The scene gradually darkens. He thought to himself, staying alive is more important than a bunch of useless rewards. A normal student from Eden Academy cleared the faulty dungeon. And on top of that, it was Han Siha, who was on the verge of failing. This news is too sensational. There will be all sorts of rumors. I use black magic, cursed objects, blah blah blah. I don't want to be famous like this. She turned her back and shoved him away. "If you pity me, keep it to yourself. I don't want it because it's not clean." "Are you crazy? Why would I feel sorry for you?" he asked. "Sorry for what? I don't even know you." Adel was stunned. She stepped closer, shouting, "What? You don't know me? How can you not know me?" "Really?" He covered his ears. She was too close, and her shouting was too loud. "Why?" With his ears still covered, he mumbled, "Am I supposed to? What's your name?" She was suddenly overcome with love-struck madness. Everything turned pink around her. Her eyes sparkled, cheeks flushed, hair flowing in the wind as she answered, "Adel. Adel Stevia." He was blinded by the light radiating from her. His eyes seemed to melt, filled with terror. "So, Adel," he stammered. She stepped back and crossed her arms, watching him. He let out an ah, thinking to himself, if it's Adel, could she be the only mage from a commoner background, consistently ranked among the top 3 at Adel Academy? He started to recall a scene, her long, flowing hair, her graceful wielding of a magic wand. Then he remembered the protagonist burying Han Siha alive, without mercy in that novel. Seeing him lost in thought, she asked, "What? Are you starting to realize I'm an AI?" He shuddered, realizing she was the one who would kill him in the future. In his memories, he recalled a starlit sky. He mumbled in response. He thought about the foolish words he'd spoken to the person who would one day carefully shovel dirt onto his grave. He screamed internally, "Why did I do that? I feel like I'm digging my own grave. Damn it!" He turned away, clutching his head, a moment of enlightenment dawning upon him. She looked at him quizzically and said, "Don't bother with pity. By the way, do you ever look in the mirror?" He asked in surprise. "Mirror?" She noticed a mirror in his room and pulled him toward it. "Look at yourself. I can't believe someone would go to the principal's office to receive an award looking like this." He looked at himself in the mirror, embarrassed. His uniform was filthy. "What the hell? Why do I look so ragged and dirty?" he exclaimed. He remembered from the novel that he was literally a gloomy, isolated person. "Well, great. I thought people avoided me out of fear, but they're actually avoiding me because I'm filthy." He looked in the mirror and ran a hand through his hair. "First, I need to do something about this hair." A day had passed at the academy. The next day, all the students were on their way to class, chatting and laughing amongst themselves. Someone walks in, capturing everyone's attention. The same question forms in everyone's mind. Who is that? I don't think I've ever seen them before. Recognition slowly dawns. Wait, could it be that student with that hair? It's Han Siha. His glossy brown hair shines. Everyone is stunned. No way. That face. That can't be the gloomy Han Siha we knew. He exudes a main character aura, sparkling like a star. He's got a new hairstyle, clean clothes, and a sharp look. The whispers and stares intensify. Yeah, he looks like a completely different person. What a dramatic transformation. It's like he's become someone else entirely. He smirks. "Huh, I heard that. You little punks?" He takes out his books. A young man approached him and asked, "Are you really Sia?" A red-haired young man appeared with an arrogant, unpleasant expression and said, "Is that right? Or did you get plastic surgery? Tell me the clinic's address. Gotta share the good stuff, right?" He thought this red-haired guy was Chris, another commoner. He was remembering the novel, how he was bullied by this Chris. Insecure due to his humble origins and lack of talent. Chris was the one who treated Sia like a pathetic servant to satisfy his own superiority complex. He said, "What's wrong? Are you too embarrassed? Even a haircut can't fix your pathetic way of talking." He looked at him provocatively and pointed a finger right in his face. Should I just ignore him? Seeing no response, he taunted, "What's wrong? Did getting a haircut erase your memory too?" The surrounding students watched and whispered amongst themselves, "Why should I care about you?" I retorted, "I don't even know why I should be nice to a rude person like you." He was furious, words tumbling out. "Are you crazy? Or do you have someone backing you up, all bark and no bite? You're even abandoned by your family." I chuckled. If I have any backing, it's probably this. I summoned Bradamani, freezing the red-haired guy in his tracks. Menacingly, I said, "Want to know? Ask him." Bradamani appeared, a fierce and intimidating presence, advancing towards him. The students erupted in excited chatter. "Wait, is that a real dragon? That's insane. How can a normal student have something like that?" Chris recoiled in fear. Not only was he unafraid, but he pointed a shaky finger at him. As I know, someone abandoned by their family must still have a lot of money. He was utterly fed up with talking to this guy. "Do you think you can just buy that dragon with money?" He sighed. "I just want a peaceful life." His thoughts turned negative. "I just want to live in peace, not to be bullied by others." He scoffed. "You stupid, slow-witted country bumpkin." The man flew into a rage. "What did you say?" He thought the guy had a strong will, but he was surprisingly easy to provoke. Just a few words were enough to drive him mad. He stroked the dragon's head, resting his chin on his hand. "No dragon would ever sit so calmly." "So you mean you've already tamed a dragon before?" He looked at him like he was a squash bug and said, "Are you afraid it'll bite?" Chris gritted his teeth in frustration. His voice remained calm. "Don't worry, I'm not that kind of person." At this point, Chris was fuming. He yelled, "This guy's crazy. Don't you know your place? If there's a problem, let's settle it right here and now." It was like two opposite worlds colliding. One side was stomping around in fury, while the other guy casually watched the show. The other students were also stirred up by the commotion. Chris was stunned by the entrance exam results. "We'll see who wins." "What do you say?" the guy said with an indifferent expression. In the following days, the academy appeared, its majestic white dome gleaming with gold trim. Under the morning sunlight, he was imagining Chris losing the bet and having to bark like a dog. It was rather amusing to picture his humiliation. He looked up at the ceiling, anticipating the day he'd hear him bark. He recalled his past life, when he used to cause trouble. Now he was a master at cleaning up messes. In his past life, he was the mad dog of the dorms. That was his nickname. Whenever something displeased him, he would start a fight, and no one ever got the better of him. He was walking down the hallway when a blonde guy called out from afar, "Hey, Han Jihan, I heard you made a bet with Chris." The blonde guy smirked, his tone provocative. "Even if you don't fail, but you think you can beat me?" The brown-haired guy next to him also sneered. "I'm kind of hoping you'll bark like a dog." He thought coldly. Isn't it the same everywhere? When a kid succeeds, they're never left alone. "What?" Unfazed by their words, he calmly asked, "Hey, what's your name?" The blonde-haired guy, hearing him ask for his name, scared. "Why would you be?" He repeated his question. "Tell me your name." "If you sincerely wish to know, then I shall tell you. The great one standing before you is Fabian Loenig. Do you really not know me?" He's reading the novel again. I remember now. So it's Fabian de Winning. His phone, displaying the novel he was reading, showed the title, "The Annoying Arrogant Royal." "So you're the one who bullies the weak." "In other words, His expression slowly changed. "You're the leader who bullied Hungsi, aren't you?" He wanted to avenge Hungsi for the bullying he endured. So he gently opened his backpack and said to Baekshin, "Go get him, little dragon." Startled by Baekshin's appearance, he asked in surprise, "This little dragon?" Baekshin, who was inside the backpack, emerged with adorable, sparkling eyes. Seeing him stare, Baekshin thought he wanted to be bitten. The goblin pounced, causing Fabian and his underlings to scatter in panic, completely disoriented. Screams of "ah" echoed throughout the academy. The sky had changed its colors, painted with the elegant hues of dusk. The academy appears picturesque and serene. Birds chirp sweetly, flying back to their nests. In a training arena, Siha is training so intensely he collapses onto the ground. Adel stands before him, saying, "Han Siha, I've heard rumors. You've been causing quite a stir lately." She continues, "If you're going to cause trouble, it's best to leave the royals out of it." He wipes his sweat, looks up, and replies, "I don't care about them. They were the ones who provoked me first." But in truth, he's seeking revenge. Adel flashes back to the scene of them being bitten by a baby dragon. She thinks to herself, they're used to bullying others, but he dared to retaliate against nobles, even royalty, when provoked. She thinks he's kind of cool, actually. Closing her eyes, she leans in and asks, don't you have a plan? She continues, you're not afraid of the nobles anymore, are you? Not only did you order Bashan to attack someone, but you even dared to make a bet with Chris. She stepped closer to him. You challenged him to a magic duel, even though your magic isn't fully developed yet. So reckless. She extended her hand as if to help him up, leaving him bewildered. With a bright, confident smile, she said, what would you do without me? He took her hand and stood up. You're learning to practice for me now, huh? She replied, shall we have one last practice session then? She took out her wand, her cheeks slightly flushed. If you can beat me, you can definitely beat Chris. He grabbed his wand as well. I won't go down as easily as I did yesterday. Adel declared. She swung her wand, conjuring a tall pillar of earth and rock, and aimed directly for his shield. An earth-shattering explosion erupted. Debris flew everywhere. And so, the special training with Adel concluded. Time flew by. Finally, the entrance exam day arrived. In the hall, a professor stood with a pen, jotting something down. Before him stood Adel and Kerberos, also known as the Hound of Hades. He announced, Adel, a student of the Magic Academy, has completed her exam in 5 minutes and 31 seconds. Rank A. Overwhelmed with joy, she was surrounded by sparkling stars. She exclaimed excitedly, thank you, Professor, and turned to celebrate with Kerberos. The dog responded with enthusiastic tail wags. Hasha watched from behind, petting Kerberos and thinking to herself with joy, that girl was struggling with the hellhound earlier. I just gave her a few pointers, and she tamed it perfectly. Well, I have experience and memories from my past life, but for Adel, as a beginner tamer, she's a total prodigy. Definitely a main character. You two will have to bury me when I die. That's terrifying. The professor's voice calling his name snapped him out of his thoughts. He put on his Bashan hat and replied, yes, I'm ready. The taming test was conducted inside a barrier. He walked confidently with his baby dragon and entered the barrier. A voice echoed, you must control your monster and fight a monster that matches your level. If you win, you pass. Simple. He was now inside the barrier space, fighting a giant crocodile. Despite its name, it appears surprisingly small and cute here. And you've chosen Barrier C. Let's begin. You have entered the barrier. A terrifying, long, and blue creature emerges. In the darkness, a bluish-green creature with a face like a dragon and a snake, and a long, snake-like tongue. Its eyes look like it's staring at its prey. He freezes. Wait, could it be an adhesion? Before he can finish the thought, the monster coils up and sticks its tongue out at him. Is the adhesion monster the same serpent-type monster that Lehon faced in his 3rd year? It looks so cool. The books describe its unique appearance, saying that even a single touch is enough to give you a taste of death. After learning the monster's identity, he turned to Ba. Don't be afraid. The little dragon was terrified of the gigantic creature, even more scared. After he said, you want to try too, don't you? You want to try after absorbing the slime's magic core, right? The dragon was speechless, probably thinking, I should have never chosen this guy. I had to eat that nasty slime core, and now I have to fight a monster way bigger than me. His voice boomed. Then let's fight. He initiated his first tactic, closing in on the dragon. A sound, he said, usually the weak point of a snake is its eyes. This snake's eyes are staring right at me, meaning I'm its next meal. He quickly warned the baby dragon, careful, Bashan. If it attacks with full force and crushes us, it's all over. While I distract it, I'll channel my magic power through my wand, get to its blind spot. Hearing this, the young dragon zipped towards the serpent's massive body, searching for a blind spot. He spoke, and just then, the serpent, distracted, looked on in bewilderment as the young dragon flew towards its eyes. Bashan opened his mouth and spewed a torrent of tiny sparks. Seeing this, he commanded, destroy its eyes. Although Bashan's flames were minuscule, their destructive power was immense, shaking the very barrier around them. The tiny flames transformed into a blindingly intense beam of light, piercing through the serpent's eyes, causing it to roar in agony before slowly collapsing. With a resounding thud, The serpent lay motionless on the ground, unable to move. Its eyes were squeezed shut, oozing dark red blood. The young dragon, having completed its task, charging towards him. Those outside witnessing this terrifying scene were utterly horrified, especially Professor Green, who exclaimed, "Oh my God, you're incredible." His hand, holding a notebook, trembled uncontrollably. He thought to himself, a Deathian is a high-level monster. Even a third-level mage would be wary. Yet, he emerged from the barrier, cradling the baby dragon. His uniform wasn't even slightly dusty. He made eye contact with the dragon. The slime core's effect is amazing, isn't it? As he stepped out, everyone was still in shock, especially the professor. He thought, it seems the administrator forgot to remove a Deathian from the barrier. I was about to stop the test for safety reasons. He looked thoughtfully at the professor. That was a close one, but I defeated it. Doesn't that still count as a success? The professor tilted his head, looking at him thoughtfully. He announced, Han Siha, 12 minutes 36 seconds, rank S. Hearing the result, Siha gripped his wand tightly. His heart felt like it was pierced by 1,000 knives. Thunder and dark clouds enveloped him. His mind was filled with question marks and the question, why? At the DNA Academy, after the taming portion of the entrance exam concluded, a rank S, in a time of 12 minutes and 36 seconds, left Han Siha speechless. He hurried away. Everyone thought he was alone, but Adel was chasing after him. She wanted to talk to him and exclaimed admiringly, rank S in taming? That's amazing. You got first place. Before, he was just an ordinary student, completely overlooked. Now he's become so exceptional, surpassing even the previously outstanding students. No wonder he's getting so much attention. Adel was full of praise. I guess our initial training sessions in other subjects were helpful after all. I'm surprised too. I didn't expect you to improve so quickly. Just a few days ago, you still needed my help with training, and now you've already surpassed me. I guess I was a bit overconfident in front of you before. Before someone as exceptional as you, I should be more cautious. Han Siha didn't hesitate to accept the compliment from his friend. I can't deny that. The protagonist's aura is overflowing. He's got serious swagger, though that flashy entrance was a bit much. The thing is, my goal is to rank 15th in the entire school. I just want to stay average, not attract attention. Lehon took him down with just one hand. Han Siha suddenly has a headache. Pretending to be clueless is surprisingly difficult. Hiding your talent can be harder than a dumb person trying to study hard. Yeah, the thoughts of a genius are uniquely strange and ordinary. Ignoring Yudahi beside him, Han Siha is lost in his own thoughts. Like a kid playing by himself? Oh no, this isn't my fault. Why would they include a monster in the exam that no one is supposed to catch? Yudahi witnessed the smart but clueless guy spacing out for a moment. He's actually kind of cute, and he's mumbling to himself. To ease the awkward silence, she asked him about school. How was the math test? Her question jolts Han Siha back to reality. All right, we had a math test today, but not for long. He's back to deluding himself. If the ranking is based on average scores, I might still be okay. Han Siha breathes a sigh of relief. The sweat from earlier is now clearly visible. He stammers. It was all right. Even top student Unte is surprised. A piece of cake? Really? Was it too cruel of me to mess up this exam? Then, with a sudden memory lapse, Han Siha wonders, is Unte weak in math? 5 seconds before disaster, he was brimming with confidence, thinking it was just middle school level math. A piece of cake for him. Maybe he should tutor Yedim in math as a thank you, right? While basking in the glory of his intelligence, Yedim said, they're giving us problems we've never learned before. I can't solve any of them. Han Sol froze for a solid 5 seconds. Stiff as a board, he did a complete 180. Time to leave. Every man for himself. Just one sentence, right? Yedim immediately asked, what are you talking about? If you lose the top spot because of one wrong answer, you won't get the scholarship. She persisted, chasing after the rapidly retreating figure. Can you solve it? The problem about the 27th magic circle? Han Siha walked ahead, but still listened to what she said, lost in thought. Geometry and vectors, huh? Then, he replied casually, as light as a feather. I think I can solve it. Adel was completely shocked. Even a top student like her couldn't solve those problems. Yet an average student like Han Siha could. And he said it so effortlessly too. Seeing Adel speechless, Hansia turned around and asked innocently, seemingly unaware of the bomb he just dropped. What's wrong? Did I say something wrong? Adel, with a stiff and embarrassed expression, said, No way you solved question 27, right? That's the only one I couldn't solve. He finally realized the issue. It hit him like a bolt of lightning. What? Even Adel, a top student, with excellent academic and practical skills, usually so diligent, couldn't solve a difficult question like number 27. She had to leave it blank. Such a blunder. Just thinking about how to explain it is tiring. The teacher will definitely ask me how I managed to solve such a challenging test and wonder why I suddenly became so smart. 7749 scenarios, meaning countless scenarios, ran through Hansel's mind in just a few seconds. Frozen for a moment. Was it that difficult? A science student walking by would probably laugh at me. What should I do? I already solved it. At that moment, in Professor Debut's office at the academy, Zealand, the person in charge of the exam results, reporting on the results of the exam. Professor Debut is presenting on the arithmetic section. Question number 2. Only one student in the entire school answered correctly. Debut receives the stack of student papers and reviews them carefully. Seeing the single correct answer, he exclaims, Unbelievable! I intentionally made this question difficult. Impossible for a second-year student to solve. So who managed to get it right? Helen looks at the papers and sighs. It's Hansia. When grading, it turns out, aside from question 2, all the other answers were intentionally wrong. This academy truly has all sorts of students. He clearly only answered the hardest question correctly to show off his abilities. For question number 2, that challenging problem, Hansia's solution was perfect from start to finish. Not a single word was wrong. It truly astonished them both. They saw him in a completely different light. In that moment, Helen committed the name Hansia to memory and lost herself in thought, speculating about him. Hansia, I remember. He was a student who stood out in the recent Taming exam. It seems he's someone who plans for the future. Time flew by, and the day of the exam results announcement, the day of the entrance ceremony, arrived. Under the large scoreboard in the main hall, a large crowd of students gathered, chattering excitedly. Of course, Hansia was there too, searching for Chris's rank, the guy who had provoked him the other day. He saw Chris's rank and scoffed. Rank 32. Same as always. In his own rank. But his joy was short-lived. The moment he saw his ranking, he froze, completely stunned and speechless, as if he couldn't believe his own eyes. He wanted to rub his eyes and check again if his name was really there at rank 11. Chris. Hansia, having likely seen the results earlier from a distance, thanks to his height advantage, easily spotted Chris in the crowd. He immediately turned and prepared to disappear into the crowd. Unfortunately for him, Hansia had already seen him. Just as Chris turned his head to scan the area, he met Hansia's sharp gaze. He still tried to escape, but as he turned to check Hansia's location, he found him standing right in front of him. Hansia had a good memory, and he wouldn't forget their bet about their rankings. Quickly moved from the middle of the hall and stood before him. He called out and gestured for him to follow. Follow me. He even waved his hand, beckoning him, like an owner calling his loyal puppy. Every student in the academy knew about their bet, so they gathered at the gate, in front of the garden on campus to watch the show. It was understandable that their story attracted attention. Who could blame them? If anyone's to blame, it's Rick for being so dramatic, challenging him in front of everyone, as if he were stupid. That was before the crowd kept growing larger and larger, wave after wave. They usually came in pairs or groups, making it as noisy as a marketplace. Everyone whispered and gossiped, enjoying the simple pleasure. Can't wait for the drama between the two top students of the academy. Someone commented sarcastically. In other breaking news, Hansia won. Chris is finally done for, thanks to Hansia. Someone else sighed in relief. Finally, someone put him in his place. A hero for us all. That bastard Chris is dead meat. He's always been so arrogant and bullying everyone. But I knew this day would come. All that bragging and showing off. He cares way too much about what other people think. In this judgmental little world, he couldn't even say a word before he started sweating bullets, glancing around nervously at everyone. Even though they weren't exactly terrified of him anymore, Hansia ignored the crowd swarming around them. Like it was some kind of festival, continues to solve his own problem. What do you think 1 + 10 is, Commoner Chris? Foolish, naive. Chris answers loudly, 2. Han shakes his head, arms crossed coolly. Wrong. It's 11th place. His closed eyes snap open, a sharp gaze like daggers, piercing straight through him. A smirk curls his lip. It's the ultimate expression of disdain. Han reserves for an idiot show-off like Chris. Chris is furious, but can do nothing, because he possesses no intelligence whatsoever. The weak can only resort to violence, using his strength to bully the weak. He already looks pissed, and then he gets hit with that defiant glare. What are you going to do about it? Han taunts. He adds another jab to twist the knife. Get it? You're just third-rate. Han calmly faces the muscle-brained idiot in front of him. He crosses his arms, exuding confidence, and thinks to himself, this guy really hasn't improved one bit. He falls for the same tricks so easily, even though I don't like provoking him. He's just someone who occasionally challenges me. I only act arrogant to get a rise out of him. Unlike some people, I actually think about others, and I'm not some pervert who enjoys watching people make a fool of themselves. So I need to take advantage of this. Han waits for the perfect moment when he's distracted. She quickly flicked him on the forehead. A loud bonk echoed, but that guy didn't get the hint. He yelled back, raising his voice even more. Blinded by rage, he lost control of his words. What the heck? Why did you hit me? This wasn't part of the deal. The bump on his forehead was huge. No wonder he was yelling. It must have hurt like hell. Even onlookers could feel the pain. His anger was so intense that smoke was practically coming out of his ears. He probably didn't expect someone as small as Han to have such a powerful flick. Han remained expressionless. She just sighed and thought to herself, I'll consider this payback for all the trouble you've caused me. She retorted, if you really think I'd be your dog, you're dead wrong. Shut up. Before he could react, Chris turned and walked away, but not before saying, meet me later in the unused clubroom in the basement. I have something for you to do. The scene changes to Han in the basement, leaning against the wall, waiting for Chris. His expression was still as arrogant as ever, his voice dripping with disdain and disgust, the same contempt he'd always shown, him or anyone else for that matter. Why did you bring me here? Han casually crossed his arms, leaning against the tall wall. He wanted revenge, but he wasn't an idiot. He wouldn't completely destroy someone. He knew how to plan for himself and others, a way to save face. Do you really think I'd make you act like a dog in front of the whole school? Is that your kind of fun? This Han is a real piece of work. A good heart, but a naive fool. Trying to act tough, still running his mouth. Yelling at me like an uneducated punk. Cut the crap. At least he knows enough to be grateful for Han little act of kindness. So, what do you want me to do? Hold on, Don't ask him for any favors yet. First, let's get the information we need from him. Do you know who my father is? He'll be surprised. He won't see it coming. You're asking me who your father is? And you're expecting an answer? Of course I know. The founder of the Bloodline DNA Empire. The one who destroyed the Dark Mages. During the Black Magic Duel, Han answered, but even he seemed doubtful. A nameless fear crept into his heart. His usually arrogant and confident face was now ashen. A thin layer of sweat formed on his brow, and his eyes darted nervously. His thoughts were just as chaotic. Why are you asking about this? Are you trying to intimidate me with your noble status? Ryu Manchiel, playing the role of Han showed no strong reaction. He acted indifferent, looking at him with disdain. I asked because I genuinely didn't know. I thought he had a mansion at the Castica estate. Han truly was a confirmed rich kid, but after a quick click, he quickly returned to the main topic. What I really want to say is this. He stepped closer to him, leaning in to whisper, avoiding being overheard, adding to the mystery. The problem is this big guy is a scaredy cat. He'd only taken a few steps forward, his arm outstretched, not even close to touching him. When the guy stumbled back, Han took advantage, closing in with 1,000% more intensity. It sounded like a request, but it was a threat. I believe you have quite an extensive network, right? Spread a few rumors around. Chris flinched. He never expected someone like Han to ask for a favor. Han loved this. He thought that elite people wouldn't need silly rumors floating around online forums behind their backs. Our rumors? What rumors? Han leaned in, whispering in his ear. No one knew what he said, but the guy's expression afterward, pure shock. His face could launch 1,000 ships. Eyes wide, jaw dropped. His expression was anything but natural. It was pure, unadulterated shock. He let out a piercing scream that echoed through the vast, empty space. Whatever he said, judging by the other's stunned expression, it must have been some shocking, hot-off-the-press gossip, the kind that's barely believable. He asked again, just to be sure. He needed to confirm before the rumor spread like wildfire and got out of control. He didn't want to be blamed for being unprofessional or for stabbing someone in the back. You want me to spread this to the other students? In contrast to Chris's shock, Han Siha remained completely calm. He didn't show any surprise, as if everything was going according to his plan. Just as he thought, Han Siha gestured with his hands. Exactly. As fast as possible, and not just within our grade, but spread it throughout the entire school. The wider, the better. It hit Chris like a bolt of lightning. Almost literally. With a face full of question marks, Chris wondered, is this guy crazy? He's suddenly become so amazing. Yet he wants to spread damaging rumors about himself. Is he so desperate for fame that his brain has short-circuited? Who wouldn't want to avoid trouble? But this Han Siha is actively seeking it out? Chris was completely dumbfounded. Is he insane? And why is Han Siha acting so nonchalant? All right, got it. I'm leaving now, Han Siha said, then walked away. At the Karka mansion, the butler is busy, reporting news about the young master to his employer. My lord, we have news about the young master from the DNA Academy. The person in the room calmly commands, enter. Inside the spacious two-story study, resembling a miniature house, Count Han Tejo sits at his desk. A picture of handsome authority, reviewing documents. What's the situation with him, he asks. This man is profoundly shrewd and enigmatic. It's difficult to discern his true thoughts. His face, though stern and bearing the marks of age, still retains a youthful quality compared to his peers. He appears remarkably younger than Han Siha, yet possessing a greater sense of experience. He seems like a future version of Han Siha. He listens silently to the report about his son, then sighs with a hint of sorrow. My poor youngest child. The butler bowed his head respectfully and said slowly, it seems the situation isn't very promising. Although the Count generously covered his tuition and living expenses, he has ceased all other support, leaving him unable to spend his own money, and thus, he's enduring hunger. Han Tae-soo simply said nonchalantly, and yet he still lives. Such hardships are necessary for him to regain his senses. His attitude towards Han Siha was crystal clear, unambiguous. Between his past involvement with black magic and their father-son relationship, if he utters any more blasphemous words about dark magic in my presence, I will not hesitate to end his life, even if he is my son. The pen in his hand snapped in two. He was decisive and clear in both his professional and personal matters. I will not tolerate wrongdoing, even if it's from my own flesh and blood. The butler added another piece of news. It seems he's finally changed his attitude. He achieved an unprecedentedly high score on the exam. He paused for a moment, perhaps because he himself was surprised by Han Siha's achievement. Such good results are unprecedented. Han Tae-soo thought it was just like before, studying just enough to not be terrible. After all, Han Siha is his own flesh and blood. Not overly talented, perhaps, but still inheriting some of his intelligence. But I thought it was only enough to avoid last place. Now the butler continued. Actually, he ranked 11th. This shocking news reached the cold and brilliant Count. He was so surprised that he dropped his quill, knocking it over, sending ink splattering everywhere. It stained the elegant brown teakwood desk. He immediately looked up at the butler, as if to ask if this news was real or fake. The butler could guess how surprised the master would be to learn his son was now a handsome young noble with such an illustrious background, so famous that everyone in the whole school knew him. So he continued his report. There have also been recent changes in his reputation. According to the latest rumors circulating at Eden Academy, the young master is said to be a kind and righteous person and possesses very handsome features. A handsome, cool Count. Han Tae-soo froze for 5 seconds, checking if he was still alive. Had his ears gone bad? Had he heard wrong? He never thought this day would come. Is my son really seen this well by others? Could he be blackmailing some AI to spread these strange rumors about himself? This is so unexpected. Even the butler is suspicious. Could he really be blackmailing some AI to spread bizarre rumors? Of course not. The old butler might have some doubts about the truth of our young master's sudden, uncharacteristic excellence, but he can't completely deny this positive change. One thing's for sure, the young master is truly changing. Han Taisu remains lost in thought. Until now, the child who was once involved with dark magic. I've always been strict and harsh, trying to make him see the light. But what if he's truly changing if in the past, his interest in dark magic wasn't entirely negative? That's why Han Taisa delved into researching it. Therefore, for a pioneer who defeated dark magic, like Count Han Taisu, this was unacceptable. That's why he always kept his son on a tight leash, playing the role of a cruel father, to crush his son's foolish, naive hopes. Ultimately, it was all for his son's well-being. Before he was the revered count, admired by all, he was Han Sia's father. He couldn't stand by and watch his son act recklessly and ruin his bright future, throw away his promising future. But if you put yourself in the shoes of someone who defeated dark magic, preventing your son from following that path wouldn't be wrong. He had countless others under his protection, whose lives depended on him. His son was just one life, and all his efforts to teach him seemed to be in vain. And now, he's come to his senses on his own, without any influence from his father. Wouldn't it be even better for you, sir, to support your son a little? There's nothing to lose for you in this. That's indeed good news. He's the only one who will inherit the Kataka estate. He pulled out his chair, stood up with a joyful expression, and declared, if he gets assigned to the magic class, in the upcoming advancement ceremony, I will restore all of his expenses. Truthfully, he still held high hopes for his youngest son, Han Sia. After all, he was his own flesh and blood. At the very least, he would inherit some of his intelligence, or perhaps some magical talent, something other than dark magic. Hopefully, not dark magic. Outside the Aiden Academy grounds, the sun was shining brightly on the main building. It shimmered and sparkled, a breathtakingly beautiful sight. Han Sia had diligently checked his bank book. At the Magic Stone ATM, the book was still warm in his hands. When Han Sia's expression changed from excitement to shock, his face darkened, his naive smile froze, and beads of sweat trickled down his face. Seeing the balance in his bank book, his hands started to tremble. Looking at the balance, Han Sia couldn't help but sigh. Looking at the results of this exam, he muttered, I heard that they would provide a portion of the previously cut allowance. So I checked. The available balance shows 10 million won. For a moment, Han Sia felt a sense of relief. Lately, he'd been struggling to make ends meet. The inconsistency of having food one day and not the next, for someone used to comfort like him, was a living hell. This money will keep me comfortable for a while. With this much, I can live comfortably for an entire semester. Han Sia rubs his hands together excitedly, celebrating like a child who's just been given candy, a narcissistic grin on his face. I'm so clever, he thinks to himself. Countess Han Taisu is someone who values honor greatly, perhaps persuading Crystal to spread those favorable rumors influence this outcome. His celebration is cut short when Adel calls out to him from behind. Han Sia, what are you doing there? He turns around to see that it's Erdiko, there to remind him of his academy duties. Come to the auditorium. It's time for the promotion ceremony. He suddenly remembers that he still has work to do. Celebrating now is a bit premature. Together, they walk from the lobby to the auditorium. At DNA Academy, once a student reaches their second year, they are assigned to a department that aligns with their abilities. Despite being such a large academy, it focuses its teaching and research on only 4 departments. The Department of Magic is where a wide range of magical skills are honed, and numerous practical opportunities are provided. The Department of Natural Sciences combines magic with research, experimentation, and academic studies. The Department of Theology blends magic with psychic abilities like prophecy and divination. Finally, there's the Department of Necromancy. This is the only place where the study of dark magic is legally permitted within the DNA Empire. It specializes in combat magic. The Grand Hall is filled with students, their eyes all fixed on Headmaster Onis, who presides over the advancement ceremony. Sophomores, welcome. We will now begin the class advancement ceremony. Let the ceremony commence. I will now explain the procedure to all students. The students whose names are called will come to the stage and place their hand on the magic dice. It is a gleaming, angular cube that emanates a majestic golden aura. It is a magical tool that detects a person's innate aptitude and shapes their corresponding specialization. Furthermore, it determines the future and survival of every student. It can be said that the success or failure of students at this academy depends on this. Hansia anxiously looks up at the small, yellow cube on the distant podium. He silently contemplates his next move. Considering the principles, Hansia was naturally assigned to the necromancer class. His desire to wield dark magic, to crush those who looked down on him, was realized, but the result was a miserable failure. Hansia stared intently at the cube activating a few meters away. He wondered, will the dice roll the same way this time? Strength flowed through his body. Hansia was lost in his thoughts. Even though I adjusted Hansia's stats to fit my preferences, I'm still not sure. What I've done these past few days, it wasn't exactly righteous. No matter what happens, Hansia was determined. I can't end up like I did in the original. Headmaster Ernish called the first student to the stage. Lehon ranked first in the promotion exam. Lehon aims for the Department of Magic. He immediately stood up and replied, yes. He proceeded towards the box on the podium. Under the watchful eyes of the surrounding students, who had formed a crowd around him, his path seemed to be a red carpet adorned with roses. All eyes were on him, showering him with compliments. Wow, just as expected, Lehon is first again. So cool. The moment Lehon stepped out from the crowd, they parted to create a path for him. It was as if all the spotlight was focused solely on him. It's what people call main character energy. Exactly. An elite student, always at the top of the rankings, never dropping below the top. Handsome, financially well-off, and kind. He's got the looks, the brains, the whole package. He knows right from wrong, never strays from the path, never goes astray. A true AI's dream. The moment he walked past, Hansia gave him a knowing smile. But there was also a hint of warning in her eyes. He had dabbled in dark magic before, so he was sure to be on this guy's radar. Hansia followed his gaze. A touch of admiration in her own eyes. Ah, that's Hana, the main character of Soul Academy. Even as Lehon stepped onto the stage and began to follow the instructions, Hansia's gaze remained fixed on him. Thoughts raced through her mind, a constant stream of commentary, like a miniature social media feed in her head. Just look at him. He really does look like he was born with all the advantages. The protagonist's setup of the main character. Life is so unfair. If only I could be reborn as the main character. Why did it have to be Hansia? But things never go that smoothly. Choosing your own identity for reincarnation. Besides, Lehon is like that, simply because he's the protagonist. Anyone who's the main character would be the same. The cube gradually shifts from gold to a bright red. Finally, the circle surrounding it expands like a balloon, floating in midair. Just then, the headmaster joyfully announces that student Lehon has been assigned to the magic department. Lehon politely bows 90 degrees to thank the headmaster. Hansia, watching from afar, sighs. Just as expected, he got into the magic department. He must have foreseen this. It's quickly the next person's turn. Next, Julia Aknet, please come forward. You're second. Hansia flinched slightly. It was Siola, the light sorcerer from the original, a genius among geniuses, and the main character's closest ally. As a result, Siola Akane was also assigned to the magic department. Hansia stood with his back to them. He had already predicted which departments each of them would be assigned to. It was obvious. He just sighed internally. The main character and those around him were always good people, unreasonably good. The headmaster continued assigning departments according to rank. Simon Parker was assigned to the necromancy department, and Jun Hanian was assigned to the theology department. Hansia had correctly guessed which department each person would go to, every single one, quietly reciting their futures verbatim. From the main characters to the supporting roles. As predicted, the familiar names, frequently heard at the beginning, after waiting for so long. Finally, it's Hansia's turn. Please come to the podium. Hansia calmly makes his way through the crowd, ascending the steps. While walking, he contemplates his future, praying that everything goes as planned. In 3 years, the mages from the necromancy department will unite and incite a rebellion. They will seize the DNA Academy, and they will be defeated by the protagonist group. So, don't join the necromancy department. His hand enters the white circle containing the cube. The cube begins to rotate. Below the stage, the audience is buzzing with excitement, even within the hall. Whoa, that's Hansia, but I heard he had changed. But wasn't he already confirmed for the necromancy department? I heard he was involved with dark magic. After Han, see her remove his hand from the small circle. The cube visibly expanded, then shrunk before the headmaster's eyes. It glowed a brilliant red, surrounding both him and Hana. Just like with Lehon earlier, the headmaster was astonished. His eyes widened in disbelief at the color. Beads of sweat formed on his brow. The crimson glow of the cube was reflected in the headmaster's suspicious gaze. An announcement echoed through the room. Student Hana has been accepted into the magic department. Hana's tense face erupted in joy. The tension was replaced by beads of sweat trickling down his cheeks. He pumped his fist in the air. Yes! End of the ascension ceremony. Everyone was staring and whispering about him. The murmuring in the small hall grew louder than ever. But Hana didn't care. He reveled in their fleeting attention. Their gazes were a mixture of emotions. Half curiosity, wondering how he got into the Department of Magic. The other half belonged to those who dabbled in dark magic. They glared, wondering why he wasn't in the necromancy department. Just then, Adel appeared behind him, excitedly waving and congratulating Siha. Looks like we'll be seeing each other often in the Department of Magic. Only then did Siha notice Adel. She was also in the Department of Magic. He asked, "Were you hoping I'd get into the Department of Magic?" Adel replied without hesitation. "It hasn't even been that long, and your cheeks are already flushed." All of Adel's attention was focused on it. Even the noisy crowd around her didn't seem to faze her. Hana was momentarily speechless. He just stood there silently, watching her. But Adel quickly noticed his change in demeanor. Seeing his sudden silence, she anxiously asked, "What's wrong?" Hana stammered, flustered. Nothing. Just remember to activate your signal clearly before you go in." The two of them resumed their lively conversation, chatting like true friends, from a third person's perspective, not far away. "If I join the necromancy department, we'll be fighting every day. I don't want to fight you. I still owe you one." Hana chuckled awkwardly. "Oh, so that's why?" Just then, a considerable distance away, someone appeared. This person suddenly called out, interrupting him mid-conversation. Hana turned his head towards the source of the inner voice. He had a vague feeling it was AI. It was Lehon. He politely waved to his fellow magic department student, a faint smile gracing his lips. "Pleased to meet you. It seems you've also been assigned to the magic department." Although his words and gestures were friendly, there wasn't a hint of condescension, no sense of superiority. Yet, even Lehon's ordinary, amiable smile gave Hana a strange feeling, a sense that something wasn't quite right. This seemed more complicated than it appeared. Hana was still suspicious. Why was this guy talking to him? Hana wondered, why is he trying to strike up a conversation with me? He began to speak. "You were interested in the Department of Magic beforehand? That's surprising. I look forward to working with you." Lehon extends his hand, waiting for a return handshake. Though still full of suspicion, he reluctantly shakes Lehon's hand. "Everything all right?" Lehon continues. "I heard you were trapped in the dungeon right before the practical exam." Hana flinches at his words. His reaction is exactly what Lehon expected. Lehon smirks. "How interesting. Even with Adel there, a normal student couldn't have survived that dungeon. So, I'm curious, what kind of magic did you use?" Siha grits his teeth, cursing Lehon inwardly. The professors decided to keep that incident secret. "So, how did he find out?" Lehon is incredibly cautious, almost impossible to predict. He's sharp and astute. Serious? Like a typical protagonist from a web novel. In other words, he believes that all evil must be eradicated. Hasia's heart suddenly skipped a beat. No way could Lehon think that he is a dark magician who needs to be eliminated? Scene change. The main hall. Hasiha carries his belongings to his dorm room. He heard they just built a new dormitory. Building 7 is almost up to par with a 5-star hotel. Stepping inside, it truly lives up to its reputation. The interior is dazzling. Hasiha looks around, try to find his room. Finally, he spots it. Building A, room 203. He pushes the door open and hears a scream. "Are you Hana? This orange-haired guy is loud for someone I just met. Someone that composed already." Siha asked with a playful expression. "That's my name, but how do you know?" The orange-haired guy grinned brightly and explained, "Because I'm your roommate, the star of the promotion ceremony, the famous second year who made Chris cry, and even a royal shed tears. You're him, right?" Hana chuckled awkwardly. "Really? It all started after the promotion ceremony." Fabi and Edwin started questioning. Why? A royal like him was studying necromancy, while Siha was studying magic. So, Siha decided to scare him a little. He smiled and whispered, "I know some interesting things. You keep blabbering about royalty." and expecting everything to be handed to you on a silver platter. But you're not actually of royal blood, are you? Fabian's face paled. He stammered. How did you know that? Hansia sighed. If you're so afraid of being exposed, then how about you keep your mouth shut and stop messing with me? Fabian, with tears streaming down his face, admitted, that's right. I couldn't enter the Magic Academy, and there's something wrong with me. It's because I'm not worthy. Hansia was startled to see him crying. Why are you suddenly crying like this? Because of this incident. He became the talk of the school. Hansia was incredibly frustrated. His plan to be a model student and graduate peacefully. Was this really going to be okay with the situation? Thinking back on this, Hansia couldn't help but let out a heavy sigh. At that moment, the orange-haired guy remembered. He hadn't introduced himself yet. I'm One. I've been assigned to the magic department this time. Nice to meet you. Unlike you, Mr. Popular, I bet you've never heard of me. Siha really wanted to say, no, you're wrong. Coincidentally, One was a name he knew. He was the most trusted ally of the protagonist, Lehon. Approachable, yet possessing sharp judgment and versatility. Most importantly, he was an informant with a vast network. One wondered why Siha looked so surprised. Siha just sighed, thinking to himself, at this rate, everyone around me, or rather, my entire surroundings, are full of main characters. The very same people who contributed to the original Sia's death. Carrying his unease, he turned to unpack his things. One cheerfully asked, why the long face? If you're done unpacking, why not join me on a dorm tour? I have a map. It'll be more fun than you think. One excitedly pulled out his map. Hansia agreed to join. It wouldn't hurt to get familiar with the place. They arrived at the dorm cafeteria. The space was surprisingly large and airy. Despite the well-equipped cafeteria, upperclassmen said that eating out was better than eating there. Hansia wondered why. That's because rumor has it the nutritionist here likes to experiment. No one knows what will be served each day. Tonight's dinner might be salad with boar's forelegs. Next up is the outdoor training ground. One explained in detail. You can freely practice magic here, but if you're not careful walking by, you could get hit and end up in the infirmary. I heard that every semester, at least one person ends up in the infirmary because of it. Hansia frowned. That's so irresponsible. Why don't they just put up a magic barrier? One Jaina praised. That's actually a great idea. So, are the rumors about you getting smarter true? Siha glumly told him to never mention it again. One burst into laughter, bright as a flower. Although, he often made unnecessary comments. But, Siha could still glean useful information from him. Having seen enough, they both decided to head back to their rooms. The sky was clear just a moment ago, but suddenly it turned dark, with black clouds engulfing the entire academy. Hansia looked curiously outside. This was definitely more than just a normal storm. It began to rain. A bad feeling washed over him. He said they needed to run to the main building and tell the professor. As One started to run, he was held back. It's dangerous. One was confused, not understanding why. He did it because he suddenly remembered something. This scene, this eerie atmosphere, even the grass, soaked and muddy from the black rain. It clearly wasn't normal rain. It was rain laced with deadly poison. People started shouting, urging each other to run inside for cover. The fog wasn't the problem. It was just a distraction. The real threat was right now. Screams began to ring out. Students were vanishing. The missing persons are Adel from the Department of Magic and Julia Aknes. They vanished without a trace. This is the key to unlocking Chapter 2. A quest window appears before him. Main story Chapter 2. The dormitory abduction case is open. Mission: find the missing students. Deadline: rewards and penalties are yet to be revealed. Chapter 2. The dormitory abduction incident has begun. Outside, the rain continues to pour. Dark clouds gather ominously. The missing students are bound by strange vines. Adel struggles and shouts in frustration, damn it, this thing won't come off. In contrast, Julia Aknes remains calm. Don't waste your energy, she advises. These vines aren't easy to break. Adel grows even more frustrated. Why didn't you say so sooner? I've been trying to find a weakness in Akinate's seven-eyed gaze, but I haven't come up with a clear solution yet. Adel sighed, still wondering why that person in the black cloak would trap themselves inside this giant tree and then just leave. I haven't offended anyone so badly that they want me dead, and I'm not important enough to be targeted for any significant reason. Unlike Julia over there, I'm just an ordinary person with no family or support. Why me? This reminds me of that time I was trapped in that dungeon. Just thinking about it makes her blush involuntarily. She wonders what Han Siha would say in this situation. She freezes, flustered by her own thoughts. Why am I thinking about him? Why am I thinking about someone who wouldn't even realize how bad this situation is, and probably sound asleep in the dorms right now? Julia watched her fume, a puzzled look on her face. I told you not to waste your energy. What was that weird display for? Julia suddenly spoke up. Adel, I have an idea. This tree, it seems like it would be weakened by sunlight. The black fog that blanketed the sky was the last thing they saw before being kidnapped. It was a thick, artificial black cloud, obscuring everything. And there was a tree trunk, rising up, as if piercing the sky. Normally, even in artificial clouds, there would be gaps for sunlight to filter through, unless there was a specific reason not to. But here, there weren't any. Adel's eyes widened, pondering the reason why the sunlight was completely blocked. He also guessed that the tree's weakness was sunlight. Impressive, as expected of the person, ranked second in the entire school. You've earned your reputation. Julia spoke up. Then I'll attack. The magic that attacked us, including the poisonous rain, is clearly dark magic. The best magic to counter dark magic is light magic. For example, the earth purification skill that I possess. Adel thought to herself. I heard that. Julia's earth purification is only at level 2, but in a small space like this, it could be effective. She nodded, agreeing with Julia's idea, entrusting her with the full responsibility. Julia looked up and sighed. For the peace of the earth, for the prosperity of the planet, and for the blessings of nature, I command thee. A halo of light began to appear around Julia. The vines seemed to be loosening their grip. Adel anxiously fidgeted. Can this much light really succeed? She wondered. Don't be ridiculous. A sudden voice startled Julia, breaking her concentration. This left her open to a counterattack. Her magic rebounded, leaving Julia weakened. The mysterious voice continued. Did you really think that would work? No matter how talented you are, bringing these inexperienced second-year students. Julia struggled to breathe. A dark mist crept into her mind, as if something was corrupting her will. A tree smiled at her and spoke. I have an offer, sweeter than death itself. Julia Arcane, I will restore your fallen family. You've suffered enough. Entering the academy after losing everything. You've stubbornly persevered until now. But you're nearing your limit, aren't you? I have the power to easily resurrect your family. Isn't that a tempting offer? Julia's face was drained of all color. Sweat poured down her face as she stammered. My family. Just then, Adel's shout broke through, snapping her back to reality. Are you crazy? Snap out of it. Do you think my life has been any easier than yours? Vines wrapped around Julia as she started speaking to the tree. Why Julia? Why start with her? You think I'm easy prey, you piece of wood? The tree responded. Even without using magic consciousness, you were able to escape the mist. That's what sets exceptionally talented students apart. Gifted students. Very well. I'll make you an offer as well. Listening to their conversation, Adel grew even more anxious. It's done. If it focuses on me, Julia might be able to wake up. It's probably some kind of magic consciousness that reflects and invades the opponent's desires. That means, Adel shouted, just stay strong. You can overcome it. As expected, the tree turned to Adel and said, let's see what your desire is. Adel immediately cut it off. Time's up, you piece of trash. I don't need to hear offers from a withered piece of wood. She acted tough on the outside, but inside, she was desperately praying for Julia. Wake up, please, more than ever. If she could buy enough time, the spell would be complete. She continued to stall. Now, I guess your real body must be somewhere, right? Trying to fool me? Don't hide behind that tree anymore. Come out, you faker. The smile on the tree deepened. What did you just say? Do you think this form is enough to deal with you? Adel squeezed his eyes shut. I can't stop it. Somebody please help me. Just then, a familiar voice rang out. Lightning. The tree instantly exploded. Adel gasped. Light magic. Is that you, Julia? No. Julia hasn't broken free from the brainwashing yet. Then, is it? Meanwhile, one was rushing to check on Julia. So the one who used light magic is him? The one who's cultivating potatoes here? It's Han Sia. Adel stammered. How? How did you find this place? And that enormous light just now. What was that? Han Sia chuckled. You're quite talkative for someone who almost died. As for the light, well, That little magic trick is just basic magic, amplified with a magic amplifier from my pocket to amplify it multiple times. Anyway, are you alright? Adel stood up and replied, "Of course. What do you take me for? I'm perfectly fine." "Good, now let's go fight," he said, then handed her a sword. Adel was dumbfounded, not knowing where the sword came from. "This is a training sword that Sia used. Knowing your personality, I figured you want to finish him off yourself. You'd love that, wouldn't you? Instead of, burying him alive." The touching moment was suddenly ruined. "You really know how to kill the mood." She just sighed in exasperation. "Right? What was I expecting from this jerk?" Adel took the sword. "Just what I needed. Besides, if the opponent is a dark mage, there's even less reason to hesitate." With that, she immediately swung the sword a few times. The dark mage, clutching his head, slowly appeared. He's finally revealed his true form. He glares at them with pure hatred. Hansia taunts, "What's with that look? Want me to gouge out your other eye too?" Enraged, the dark mage lunges forward. "I'll kill you, you bastards!" Instantly, and is surrounded. He's creating an environment advantageous to himself. He speaks, his voice dripping with venom. "My power has returned. You're finished. Shut your damn mouth, you imbecile." He launches a mental attack on Hansia. A useless, talentless failure, abandoned by your family. A 7-time dropout who couldn't even graduate. Don't despair. You're better suited for dark magic. He whispers, tormenting Sia's mind. So this is brainwashing. It's quite unpleasant. But Hansia easily breaks free, without any help from the AI. Before his stunned gaze, it seemed he was trying to trigger Hansia's fragmented memories. Unfortunately, those words had no effect on him. The dark mage yelled in frustration. "The brainwashing magic isn't working, but the conditions were met. It should be working." Hansia scoffed. "You're so weak. Unlike me." He continued to wield his dark magic. "You arrogant bastard." The dark mage merged with the tree. And if he remembered correctly, the true nature of the baobab tree was the world tree. But the dark mages, the nurturers of saplings, had created a hybrid. Inside, it powerfully amplified the dark mages' brainwashing magic. It strengthened their magical consciousness. The solution was simple. Monster consciousnesses often relied on their abilities, so it doesn't have high endurance. He shouted towards Adel, "Hey, this tree weakens in sunlight, right?" Adel confirmed, "That's right, but why? Even a tree's nature can't withstand fire." He retorted. Immediately, he ordered Beishin to unleash his power. The dark mage panicked. "How dare you? Beishin's fire magic against my wood magic?" Unexpectedly, both were knocked back. He cursed under his breath. "Damn it," he anxiously called out to Beishin. Little Beishin teared up and whined. "Looks like hugging him reduces the damage." "Thank goodness." The dark mage's voice boomed again. "This isn't the time to be distracted, you fool." He didn't understand how the tree had gotten so close. But thankfully, Adel appeared just in time, slicing the tree trunk into pieces. She turns back to him. "You owe me one for this." Hansia lets out a nervous laugh. "I thought I was going to die." Adel lays out his plan. "I'll do my best to destroy all these tree trunks, even though you fought Bashin fiercely. We need a finishing blow to completely end this. It seems Julia has woken up, but we're still just trainees, and our opponent is a powerful dark mage. In this crazy situation, there's no way they can win. But if it's you, I think you'll know how to handle this sticky situation. Am I wrong?" Hansia unconsciously smiles. The sky begins to rain. That dark mage must be insane. Creating fire and then making it rain. A mistake when using magic. No matter what tricks you pull, stupid is still stupid. He confidently attacks. "Once the light disappears, this place will be mine again." "Excellent." He's grabbed both of his ankles. "Got you." Klaparatudi. But Hansia bursts out laughing. "I can't believe you actually fell for that." He pulls out his weapon and unleashes a lightning attack. But the lightning bolt travels along the vines, heading straight for the dark mage. His body is engulfed in lightning. Unexpectedly, before the new year, I get to hear such spectacular fireworks. The dark mage can't believe what just happened. How could such low-level magic possess such terrifying power? Unbelievable. The brainwashing must have worked. This is all your fault. Hansia doesn't care and immediately turned away. Who cares about the villain's empty words? Why bother paying attention to that nonsense? But his next words made Hansia freeze. 5 seconds haven't ended yet. I have to find the cube. That cube, as fast as possible. When Sia looked back, he was gone. Sia had heard of the cube before. The cube. It was definitely mentioned in the original work. Lost in thought, someone called out to him. You said your name was Han Sia, right? The tactic you suggested earlier was impressive. Shouldn't we discuss things further? He couldn't believe Goddess Siola was talking to him. Han Sia knew her too. In this school, who hadn't heard of Siola Agnes? Sia thanked her for what happened earlier. Siola waved her hand dismissively. No, I should be the one thanking you. You suggested using the rain to extinguish the fire inside and minimize the risk of it spreading, and also to amplify the lightning magic using the surrounding rainwater puddles. But if Julia hadn't cast lightning resistance on me, I would have been electrocuted and turned into charcoal. Julia humbly credits him for ordering the defense. Han Sia thinks to himself, decisive action and immediate magic execution. It seems like he has a deep understanding of how to use lightning magic. On the other hand, Julia senses something different about Han Sia. He's changed from before. Han Sia asks, do you know why that dark mage kidnapped you too? Adel finally speaks up. Based on what we've discussed, it seems they wanted to capture us, to brainwash us, and turn us into their minions. So that was their plan. Kidnapping the top 2 students from the DNA Academy and brainwashing them into becoming pawns. That's quite an intriguing plan. And if they're skilled enough to brainwash even Julia, then it's clear I can't defeat them with just basic magic. My train of thought is interrupted by Bastion's whimpering. He's worried about me. Han Sia reassures me. It's really okay. Why are you getting so worked up? I ask. I almost broke my back protecting you. Adel interjects. Bastion's just worried about you. One agrees. Even though you're an S-rank beast tamer, he says, you can be pretty dense sometimes. A light begins to appear. This light also shines within me. Han Sia looks surprised. So, this is what it feels like, she murmurs, to achieve something together. I've run into a problem, one I've never faced before. Now I understand. The sound of everyone's laughter, it just keeps echoing. If even Han Sia praised me, then I must have really hit those tree trunks hard, right? I protected Julia Cho until she woke up too. Han Sia smiled gently and praised everyone. Speaking of which, it seems like there's more to happen in this chapter. Elsewhere, one is complaining about wading through the water with Han Sia. But wasn't that something he volunteered for anyway? Adel and Julia decided to rest and recover inside the tree trunk, although the poison dissipated with the giant tree's death. Truly, this wild swamp isn't a place humans can easily traverse. But the real reason he went through all this trouble, to a secret place within the Soul Academy, searching for a hidden gateway. Han Sia gently touches the stone wall. The door immediately opens, much to one's excitement. Apparently, this is a hidden relic, a treasure discovered by Lehon, the one who rescued Julia with just his life force. But Han Sia was one step ahead. And now, this mountain of gold belongs to him. With his fortune, he can do whatever he wants. Even a despicable villain needs to make a living. Who knows when another opportunity like this will come along? One is utterly astonished by the sheer amount of gold. He keeps wondering if this treasure has an owner. If it did, they must be long dead. The statue at the entrance is a 300-year-old relic. One's eyes light up at this revelation. But he's curious. How did Sia know about this? It leaves him completely speechless. Han Sia quickly makes up an excuse. We learn about all of this in history class. By the way, the tribes that worship Cerberus around here, they all build statues of him. Just then, Bastion suddenly let out a few cries. Curious, Hasagi looked over at Theo and saw him happily fawning over the gold bar. I can't believe even animals love gold. Speaking of which, that little guy really loved the cheese last time. Maybe he likes things that are yellow. Hasagi waved his hand and told them to take as much as they wanted. As for him, he would climb somewhere else to search for treasure. He had already found a small chest in this world. Survival was more important than money. To survive, you needed strength. And to gain strength, you had to search for items that increased your power, not money. It was perfectly logical. This was the chest that Lehon received in the original story, after defeating the Black Sorcerer. Curious, Juan approached and peered inside. I wonder what that thing is that Rossi has. It looks like a magic book. One suddenly yells out, "That's a basic black magic book." He frantically tells him to put it down. It could be cursed, or you might not be able to resist the allure of black magic. What if you turn evil? Han Sia ignores him and flips through the pages. It appears to be blank. Confused, He wonders what's going on when suddenly the book floats up. A system message announces that the book is changing, based on the user's characteristics. Synchronizing with basic black magic, the book returns to his hand, with its attributes changed. It seems to be a magic book that can adapt to the user. I don't remember putting it here. There's no denying it's incredibly useful. If it contains all the basic magic spells, then it's incredibly valuable. We hit the jackpot. A high-level magic book. It can suggest necessary spells, based on the user's characteristics, and allows them to learn all the magic within, all at once. It's like a textbook. In other words, this is a chance to learn basic magic that even academy students struggle to learn all year. Outsmarting. Han clutched the book, giggling maniacally, making one terrified. We can leave now. Han called out, Bai Shin, let's move slowly. The others up there must be bored. He'd just taken one step when he heard a strange voice. Han looked around frantically, but saw no one. It seemed he was the only one who could hear it. The book in his hand suddenly glowed. The stranger's choice. This can't be a coincidence. The voice echoed again, directed at Sia. Having arrived in this world, your every action will restore the world. Sia felt dizzy. Restore the world? What does that mean? That's right. Seemingly harmless actions could change the story. I shouldn't have come here today. I was supposed to be a character who wouldn't survive. The book shone brilliantly. Sia stared at it, forming a theory. If this book, it's a book that can see through all truths in words. This book is the prophecy comment book. He looked up, gazing at the prophecy comment book. The comment book was glowing intensely. Thinking of the comment section as an absolute prophetic book, no matter how much he tried to deny it. What the book said was sure to happen. Hana recalled the fun times he had at school, and continued, this means I should hold back now, interfere with everything. Or, am I supposed to be a stranger? I should have been isolated from the events. But coming to the academy to live a good life, maybe that was really my own ambition. As Hana paused in thought, a voice echoed. However, stranger, if that is the role assigned to you. Suddenly, the prophecy comment book was as if imbued with divine power. Empowered by something, it glowed brightly, its pages fluttering endlessly in the air. It can talk. Continuing from before, it commands Hana, accept it, so you can guide the miracles of this world. It threatens Hana. If you don't, the world will be destroyed. After saying that, the book vanishes. I was about to argue with it, but it disappeared before I could say anything. Suddenly, he feels incredibly unwell. His eyes glaze over. What is this, he thinks. A surge of power floods his body. Is this the price for hearing the prophecy? With that thought, he loses his footing and collapses to the ground. Scene change, a luxurious, extravagant room. Someone scolds him. You have no idea how shocked I was when you suddenly fainted. Hana lying in bed, stammers, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. But right now, could you let me rest for a bit? Hearing this, the orange-haired guy turned away, leaving him alone in the room. Before leaving, the orange-haired guy thoughtfully told Hana, all right, get some rest. I'll go grab something from the convenience store. As soon as he left, Hana breathed a sigh of relief, having finally gotten rid of the line. Then, remembering the orange-haired guy's reproachful look, a smile unconsciously crept onto his lips. He idly thought, my thoughts have suddenly become so complicated. Recalling everything that had happened, he mused, my actions have caused quite the butterfly effect. As a result, that action could get the main characters killed, and the dark mages could win the war. And perhaps, in the end, the Adel Empire might collapse. He rested his chin in his hand, lost in thought, envisioning various paths for himself. He thought, in a world that's been destroyed, I wouldn't be able to survive either. No matter what happens, it would be the worst possible outcome for me. His eyes wavered as he continued to ponder. I had planned to live a peaceful life until the very end of the story. But if my destiny is to shake things up, I've done enough of that in my past life. He recalled his pathetic former self. He was always subjected to whispers and the judging stares of others. He thought by involving myself in things I should have avoided, I ended up making people envious. I faced betrayal and was driven to despair. He looked back at his lonely past self and made up his mind. I don't ever want to live a life like that again. It felt like finally he had longed for his own death. Back in reality, he looked towards the window, lost in thought. But if the world really is going to end, Because I'm a variable. I can't ignore this nagging feeling. Suddenly he stopped. His hands gripped the blanket. He spoke, questioning himself. Why am I sitting here, seriously thinking about this? He looked up at the ceiling, chuckling. When a similar situation happens, I'll face it head on. He spoke confidently, proud of his abilities. That's right, I'm the only one who knows the true story of the Soul Academy. What will happen? One is reincarnated, and the other, Hana, is an outsider. But he's not really Hana either. From the window, gentle breezes blow in, causing the curtains to flutter. Inside, Hana radiates with undeniable handsomeness. He leans against his hand, lost in thought. Who am I really? The next morning, at the Soul Academy, Hana thinks to himself, after discovering that the mastermind behind the kidnapping is a dark sorcerer. The Academy wants to keep this a secret. In class, the teacher continuously praises Hana and the orange-haired guy for their achievements. Hana remains indifferent to the flattery. But the orange-haired guy? He's ecstatic. He's acting like he just won the lottery. Hana thinks to himself, after our reckless rescue mission to save Adel and Sophia World, I had to face the consequences of ditching the Academy without permission. At the same time, we were praised for bravely saving our classmates. I forced a smile, thinking, finally, some recognition. My inner materialist emerged, whispering, it would be better if they paid me. In the classroom, the teacher's voice boomed, announcing the first assignment for our practical magic class. I froze for a good 5 seconds. When I heard the teacher's next words, this will be a group assignment. Stunned, I thought in disbelief. Right after getting out of the hospital, I'm already stuck with a group project? Is this for real? I defined the term group project to myself. Group project. It's like a bus driver and a fare evader. My MBI type isn't suited for group projects. He felt the weight of it all, thinking, I have to carry the entire project on my own. He handled the spreadsheets, the PowerPoint, and even the presentation itself. Annoyed, he continued to think, among those who cause trouble and annoyance, there's always one who disrupts everything. There was someone in his group who called saying, oh, I'm too busy. I can't send the research materials. What? No, I need to go another round. Hello? What are you talking about? There were others who did a sloppy job and then said, I did it, but I don't really understand it. So, let me just copy everything, okay? After recalling the terrible experience of group projects, he chuckled dryly and thought, it was a real-world experience, with many different kinds of people. I find that group projects are more terrifying than hunting monsters. Group projects in practical magic class is a crucial part of the Academy. The objective of the Soul mission is to return with the designated items from each dungeon. Exploring higher difficulty dungeons will earn bonus points, but there's also a significant risk of receiving 0 points if you fail due to time constraints. The teacher continued, addressing the students. I expect everyone to demonstrate excellent teamwork. He added, the formation of teams will be entirely up to you. Upon hearing this, everyone in the class was stunned. Someone couldn't hold back and shouted, what? Despite the students' loud protests, the teacher continued, unfazed. You have 10 minutes to choose your team members. Hana, however, didn't bother looking for a team. She thought lazily, what a drag. I wonder who's going to have to carry this team. While he was yawning away, someone approached him and said, hello, Hana. It was a friendly-looking, dark-haired guy. He asked Hana, would you like to join my group? Hana turned around, surprised that someone actually invited him to join their group. Why? Why would you invite me? He wondered. A flurry of questions filled Hana's mind. Everyone around them witnessed the scene, equally puzzled. Someone whispered, why would Lehon invite Hana to join his group? Another person replied, why what? It's obvious. Hana got a good score in the beast taming class. Hana gave a forced smile and asked Lehon, so, you want to do the group project with me? Lehon smiled at Hana, anticipating his answer. But to everyone's surprise, Hana bluntly refused, saying, my answer is no. It was like a bucket of cold water thrown in Cho Leon's face. His face stiffened. That was harsh. Hana's response was blunt, piercing straight through Leon's heart. He stood there frozen for a moment. The scene shifts back to the room. He recounts the whole story to Adel and the orange-haired guy. Adel bursts out laughing. Hansa, I didn't know you could be so clueless. Feeling bad for Leon, the orange-haired guy scolds Hansua. How could you reject him so flatly? The orange-haired guy sits across from Hansua. He speaks up. We came to you and said we wanted to join your team, and you didn't refuse us. Isn't it a huge advantage to team up with a genius like Leon? Why did you turn him down? Hinsua calmly replies, I don't like it here. I was more comfortable before. You say that, but you have another reason, don't you? Comfortable? What are you talking about? I'm scared because I'm involved with the main character. After thinking it over, he stood up, forced a smile, pointed at his uniform and asked, Oh, come to think of it, why are we all wearing new uniforms? He thought to himself, I need to change the subject quickly. Just as he was changing the subject, orange hair, completely forgot about what just happened. He laughed and said, Oh, right. From the second year onwards, the ties and robes change depending on the department. There are 4 types of ties in the academy. Red is for the Department of Magic Research. Navy blue is for the Department of Necromancy. Green is for the Department of Natural Studies. And lastly, dark blue is for the Department of Theology. What a coincidence. Everyone in our group is wearing a red tie belonging to the Department of Magic Research. Seeing this, Adel excitedly remarks, Since we're all wearing the same color, it really feels like we're on the same team. Observing them, he thinks to himself, no matter how much they're praised as the main characters or exceptional students, they're still just kids. Seeing them easily laugh and find joy in the smallest things. He picks up a piece of paper and says, Let's decide on a dungeon for our assignment. Pointing to a forested area on the paper, he suggests, What do you think about the B-rank dungeon, the Ghost Forest? Someone else offers a different opinion. Aiming for a dungeon with higher difficulty and better rewards might be a good idea too. Like the A-rank dungeon, the Witch's House, for example. Someone refutes that suggestion. That's a valid point, but listen, you know that. Whether we can clear a dungeon or not depends on the items we acquire, right? Depends on the items we acquire, right? Suddenly, someone spoke up. I think it's in the Haunted Forest. There's a hidden S-rank item there. Julia and Adel gasped in surprise. S-rank? Really? Everyone excitedly chattered. Awesome. With that, we can beat all the other teams. The bonus reward might be something Professor Green would like. Shia, how? You always find out information that even I don't know. He scratched his neck and replied, Well, maybe it's thanks to reading books. Everyone was excited and ready to go. All right, let's head there. Watching everyone laughing and joking, he thought to himself, things are changing fast. Maybe being a jack of all trades suits me better. He recalled the story's plot. Of course, this hidden reward. It will truly be discovered by a soul harvester during the 3rd year of the Soul Academy, but to truly step into this world seriously, instead of just being an outsider. He concludes, that's how we need to prepare. Everyone unanimously decides, let's prepare everything one by one, and meet again in 2 days. All right, it's settled. Everyone disperse and go home. Scene change. The sun has set. In a deep, long corridor, a group of Soul Academy students are gathering. One of them reports to the leader, I have the information. The dungeon they chose is the B-rank Stopping Demon dungeon. Hearing this, the leader strokes his chin and lets out an "oh." He smiles sinisterly, as if plotting something wicked. He orders, then we must prepare as well. Fast forward to a few days later, the day of entering the dungeon. Han Xia's group is holding lamps, illuminating a room to find a way in. While most dungeons are located in outdoor spaces, near the academy, the haunted forest, a specific dungeon must be accessed through the academy library. Hana tries to scare her teammates by telling them that there's a rumor that in the early morning, ghosts escape from the dungeon and wander around the library. Due to a weakened barrier, Adel, although scared, tries to act tough. She laughs and shakes her head, saying, That's a lie. There are no ghosts. Hana leans in and whispers, Actually, it's true. Adel freezes in terror. Suddenly, a boy appears in the corner of the room. A blue aura emanates from his body, making Adel scream in fright. A ghost, she cries. His face is pale and lifeless. He begins to explain, I'm just a normal person who happens to be a monster. So, of course they exist. Hana calmly looked at him and asked who he was. He looked him up and down, then began to analyze. Judging by the color of your tie, you seem to be a magic student. So, why are you here? He responded by introducing himself. I'm Yusubatan, a freshman. He added, I'm here to join you in the dungeon. The name sounded familiar. He thought to himself, Yusubatan, that name rings a bell. He tried to remember. They said there was a freshman who showed exceptional talent in prophetic magic from a young age and was adored by the top second-year theology student. Like a favorite student, seeing the Hana group stay silent, he added, I won't be a burden. So, will you allow me to come along? He was still thinking if someone like this had come to participate in the magic class's dungeon exploration. Hana said awkwardly, us, but he asked directly, what did you see? Button was stunned by the question, his eyes wide, mouth agape, speechless. Hana continued with a cold expression. So you have a specific purpose and need to follow us, right? A voice spoke up from behind him. Oh my goodness. A girl slowly approached. She said, you shouldn't doubt others so groundlessly. If you're heading into the haunted forest, within this messy pile of books. Speaking of which, she lunged forward, grabbing Adel's shoulder, making her yelp in surprise. She finished her sentence, saying, Uzbatan might be helpful too, since he can see ghosts. Realizing she'd startled Adel, she winked and said, oh, did I scare you? Sorry. Yun Hyum, a second-year theology student, and I'm here to be your protector. Hein recalled the moment when a pale purple orb emerged from Yuziang's hand. It slowly floated into the air, radiating a beautiful light. Yuziang seemed to have seen something, just as he suspected. Hana, recently, during a prophetic magic practice, Yuzio saw something. Hyung, tell me what happened. Ever since, he's been insistent on following you everywhere. It's the first time I've seen such a reaction from a child who's usually so quiet. I got permission from the professor to go with Yuzio, on the condition that I act as his guardian. Hearing Hyung's explanation, you finally speak up. I don't care if it's true or not, but you aren't hiding anything, are you? You think to yourself, like you're a spy from another group, hired to sabotage us. Hyung hears your question, and, sensing your suspicion, replies, haha, don't worry. The only reason I agreed to be Yuzio's guardian is because... She pauses for a moment, then answers honestly, and that's because of you, Hani. He playfully poked Ra's face and asked again, me? Why me? Hyung asked shyly. Because of me? She pointed at him and replied, because you're my type. He was stunned into silence, completely surprised by the beautiful girl's confession. Hyung, blushing and flustered, reminisced about the past. The moment you were assigned to the light magic department, we met, and I just had this feeling. Her face flushed crimson as she cupped her cheeks in her hands. Then, shyly, she said, those eyes, your slightly brown hair, and that crooked smile, you're so handsome. I always wanted a chance to see a handsome guy like you. Listening to Hyung describe him made him blush intensely. His soul practically left his body. Watching him stand there frozen with a goofy smile, thought, his soul is floating around somewhere. Then one spoke up, you don't know? Ian Hyung is famous not just in the theology department, but also for collecting handsome guys with high scores. One added, since this is a dungeon filled with dark attribute monsters, I see no harm in cooperating with theology students. One bluntly thought to himself, Hani's troubles aren't my problem. Julia, hearing one's reasonable words, replied, me neither. Hani, fuming, cursed under his breath. This guy's way too calm about this. On the contrary, Hui, delighted, chimed in, since everyone agrees, we can officially enter the dungeon. Uzbatan, who had been waiting for those words, quickly reached for the bookshelf and nudged a book. He explained to everyone, the condition to break the barrier is to take a book. From that box, beams of light radiated outwards, illuminating a section of the room. The light was so bright that Hani couldn't help but raise his hand to shield his eyes. He thought, man, that's bright. After a moment, the light dimmed, allowing him to see clearly. Before user, on the third floor, was a massive blue light. It pulsed and swirled. He immediately recognized it as a dungeon entrance. Suddenly, Bashan let out a whimper. User understood. Bashan's only experience with dungeons was with slime training dungeons. It was probably shocked by this sight. He picked Bashan up, holding its front paws, and said, it's all right. He held it close and looked towards the light, speaking to everyone. Let's go. Baek-shin roared in response. Scene change. Explosions erupted one after another, everywhere. Hansa's group was struggling. World shouted, Adel. She immediately drew her sword. Got it. Watching from afar, he saw everyone fighting fiercely. He sighed and thought, Professor Green didn't emphasize teamwork for no reason. It wasn't without reason. He remembered the special item provided for the dungeon. There was only one. He glanced at the other groups, seeing them fighting over it. Ripping it apart, he understood the problem. Without the item, they couldn't see the spectral monsters inside the dungeon. If the members lacked cooperation, or get too focused on individual scores. They'll just argue before even facing the monsters. He chuckled to himself, thinking, we decided beforehand that the AI would use blindfolds first. Looking towards Gol and Adel, he said, we'll assign reconnaissance to Adel and Whirl, as they're the fastest. He continued, analyzing the other side, Julia and Bagel, while Julia, who's strong against dark attribute monsters, and Bagel, with his firepower, will take on the role of damage dealers, quickly dealing with the smaller monsters. He smirked, conjuring a bow and arrow with magic. Beneath his feet, he was still crushing a small goblin. It's a perfect plan, he thought. In a distant corner, Hyun and Wuchil had been observing the whole time. Hyun spoke first. They're truly impressive. Handling everything without needing us, he added. But what's even more impressive, Hani, is, oh my god, watching you fight alongside Beishin is truly amazing. Without any theology classes or special items, how can he? Since the ghost's movements so easily, it's like fighting blindfolded. Ulgrin ponders silently. It's true. The revelation I received that day was correct. He remembers everything from that moment. The purple orb told him that. An outsider from the magic department would save the world. Inside the orb, an image of Hani appeared, with Beishin riding on his shoulder. Suddenly, Ulgrin senses danger. He shouts, Hani, Sunbae, there's a powerful energy source approaching from the right. Hearing OSA say that, he turned to his right in surprise. He asked in astonishment, what? From within a small wooden house, a mysterious and immensely powerful purple energy emanated. It pulsed outwards, threatening to engulf Hana and the others. Within the dense purple aura, a figure gradually materialized. Hana immediately thought, what is this chilling feeling? This pressure is completely different compared to facing a horde of monsters. The shadowy figure came into clear view. It wasn't human, but a skeleton, to put it bluntly. It was like the Grim Reaper. He exclaimed in shock. Could it be a boss? An S-rank boss? He stared at the boss, analyzing its features. Its main attack is psychological, reading its opponent's memories. Therefore, Julia, and I will face the boss's attacks head-on. OSA yelled, Julia, see ya, the boss is moving. Are you ready? Hana responded. Then he looked at the giant boss and thought, we've endured a similar attack before. We've faced something like this once before. The boss swung its weapon, launching an attack. He couldn't dodge it in time. He was stunned. This is a real boss, he thought. Such attack speed. Anxious, he told himself to calm down. Stay calm. This isn't a physical attack. Don't panic. If we ignore the voices we're hearing and hold on to our fading consciousness. Suddenly, a question popped into his head. Where am I? A strange feeling washed over him. A place where even senses cease to exist. A space filled with the darkness of a void. He looked around and said, a psychological attack, just like the ultimate move of a high-level demonic monster. Something fell off. A nagging suspicion crept into his mind. Wait a minute. Something strange here. He analyzed the situation, his mind racing. A B-rank dungeon shouldn't be this easy. There's no way the boss should be strong enough to use a skill like that. He walked forward, pondering. What the hell was going on? Were the others all right? Just then, an AI voice cut him off. You killed it, you bastard. He was taken aback by the words. He spun around to see who had spoken. Another voice responded. I apologize, the first voice said quickly. The second voice was accusatory. If you thought you couldn't handle it, you should have given up. His eyes widened in shock. Could these be my real memories? He realized he was right. Behind him is an illusion of himself. He stares at his own reflection, questioning his true memories. Suddenly, the illusion transforms into him at a different point in time. He smiles, thinking that even after all this time, some things never change. The illusion shifts again, and a terrifying voice speaks. The scene flashes back to a hospital. Doctors and nurses are gathered, talking amongst themselves. One of them speaks up. That's the bastard who stabbed his elder in the back. Another replies, don't mess with him. He's a psychopath. He lives in his own world. He stands in behind the wall, overhearing their every word. He thinks, kids these days have no fear. I've never regretted what I did. He remembers why he acted the way he did. I was just doing what I thought was right. It had to be done. The person I reported, a doctor who called himself a psychiatrist, was practicing unethical medicine, abusing and killing many innocent lives. That's why I exposed his crimes to the professors, university students, and the hospital, because he had many connections and outranked me. Instead of being praised for doing the right thing, I was criticized like a villain. I realized how small the world truly is. No matter which hospital I trained at, everyone avoided me like a snitch. Even though I was recognized as a genius, all I received was criticism and insults for ruining the career of a senior, whom they considered a god. As this continued, he recalled a moment when a colleague urged him, "Honey, what's wrong? We have to get into the operating room now." His voice trembled as he helplessly replied, "I don't know." He looked down, staring at his uncontrollably shaking hands, a panicked thought crossing his mind. Why are my hands shaking like this? Even when he tried to stop them, the trembling wouldn't cease. A voice boomed angrily. "This is absurd." The director slammed his hand on the table in frustration, his voice rising. "A surgeon who needs to perform an operation has trembling hands? Don't let him into the operating room." Scene change. He was now seeing a therapist for treatment. The therapist said, "It seems like repressed emotions are manifesting as hand tremors." Dejected, he lowered his head and replied, "I guess so." He listened as the therapist continued, "We can't resolve this immediately. We need to monitor your progress." He wonders, why am I in this situation? Why did I come here for this internship? Defeated, he buries his face in his hands. He feels trapped, like he's stuck in quicksand. No matter how hard he struggles, he can't escape. Back at the hospital, the gossip and criticism continue relentlessly. Someone remarks, "How did he even have the nerve to apply for a clinical internship? That shaky-handed bastard." Another chimes in, "I remember he was a brilliant student in college. He wasn't incompetent at all." Overwhelmed with sadness, he recalls that time. He felt suffocated by their judging eyes and harsh words. Each day chipped away at his mental strength. After a while, he finally made a decision. He left the hospital. Negative words clung to him like weak and incompetent. He was Jinwoo, he thought, a name like Sung Jinwoo. Back to reality from the demon castle. He thought anxiously, "I've been thinking for too long. Maybe things will be okay, but maybe I'm still." Suddenly, a light appeared above his head. He looked up, wondering, what is that light? Igris rushed towards him from out of nowhere. Seeing him, Igris cried out joyfully. He was astonished. He hadn't thought Igris would follow him this far. How Igris, he thought. Confused, he thought to himself, we're in the middle of a mental space created by the boss's psychological attack. How can he enter someone else's mental space? Igris jumped into his arms. The small creature looked at him, its eyes glowing with an orange light. A faint gold, then a flash of orange, flickered in his eyes. Then it clicked. He understood. Taming wasn't just some skill. It was magic that connected the hearts of mage and monster. It finally made sense. He could vaguely sense Bradamanti's negative emotions, the anxieties clinging to its past. He pulled Bradamanti close, nuzzling against it affectionately. "What kind of dragon?" he murmured. "Has emotions like these? You're practically a dog." Bradamanti clearly enjoyed the affection, reveling in the embrace. He thought to himself, now I understand why I made that decision. It wasn't just because I disliked that senior mage or some youthful rebellion. He continued his thought. I couldn't go against my own sense of justice, however small, not when lives were at stake. He picked up Buru Brazil and said softly, "Let's get out of here, Buru. Thanks to you, I've snapped out of it. I'm determined not to lose." Suddenly, Buru cried out and pointed repeatedly to the left. "What is it over there?" he asked. He followed Buru's lead, carrying him in the direction he pointed. As he walked, he was stunned to see something. "Could that be?" he exclaimed. After getting a clearer look, he saw it was enveloped in a purple aura. "It's a mysterious item," he said. He looked up at the object floating in midair and thought, I get it. Since we're inside the monster's body, things that were invisible from the outside are now visible. According to my memory, that's the hidden item, magic lamp. He took a closer look at the magic lamp. There's something inside the lantern. It's burning with a fierce purple flame. He realizes what it is. The monster's core. Its heart. He channels magic into his hand, creating a blue light. He thinks, if we can just get that out, we can defeat it. The light he emits grows stronger. He shouts, "Brazil, lend me your strength." Hearing this, Brazil bursts into intense flames. Within the raging fire Brazil emits, 3 bright blue arrows suddenly appear. He yells, 3 arrows. He uses magic to create 3 blue arrows, combining them with Brazil's fire to increase their power. He fires them straight at the magic lantern, containing the heart. The The boss's attack creates a massive shockwave. Moments later, the item obediently appeared before him. He picked up the demonic lamp, thinking to himself, "All right, the cheesy movie scene is over. Take this, you bastard." He looked at the high-grade item in his hand, unable to contain his excitement. A satisfied smile spread across his face. A voice called out, "Honey, you finally made it out. Adel's been waiting for you." Seeing him emerge safely, she ran towards him and said, "Julia got out a while ago, but you were inside that monster for so long. We were so worried." One also asked if you really defeated the boss. He brought up a system screen and replied to one, "Yeah, look at this." A notification popped up on the system screen. "You have cleared the B-rank dungeon, Forest of Ghosts." One exclaimed, "That's amazing." Julia, silent until now, finally spoke up, "Is this a hidden item?" Julia had been observing the lamp in his hand. She couldn't believe it actually existed. Junsia had asked about a ghost lamp item, so he asked him about it too. "Actually, Shia, I thought you were just bluffing. The chance of finding a hidden item in a dungeon is incredibly low. So, I thought we were just playing it safe in this dungeon." He chuckled inwardly, thinking, "One makes a good point." Julia pondered thoughtfully, "That's strange. We all thought we could handle the boss's psychological attacks. But it wasn't that easy. As you saw, Hana used a high-level psychological defense spell. Inside a B-rank dungeon, Sewin reached out to sense the hidden item. Then he spoke. Thinking about it, there are a lot of inconsistencies. Even this hidden item has a power level 10 times stronger. No, hundreds of times stronger than normal. Hearing this, he paused, lost in thought. So it wasn't just my intuition. Something's not right. He voiced his thoughts. Come to think of it, where Eon Hyung and User Button, Julia and World were stunned. What? They were just here a moment ago. World exclaimed. An AI voice echoed. This way. The Hana party turned towards the sound and saw figures cloaked in black. Everyone gasped. Who are you? Above them, Ian and User Button were bound by thick vines. Adel shouted, Wait, Hyung and User are being held captive there. One of the men spoke up. If these pesky theology students hadn't insisted on protecting you, I would have just knocked them unconscious. But they were truly annoying. Among the group, a mysterious girl with blonde hair could be seen. The man continued speaking. You were quite close to these kids during your freshman year, weren't you? Tie his AI up. He then added, even though you're laughing and playing with these magic brats now, we all know that's not your true nature. So, show us your true emotions. He shouted, bring them out. Adel whirled, and Julia were angered by his words. The man removed his hood, revealing a handsome face with black hair. He continued speaking. Join our group. Hani hears him and forces a laugh. He thinks to himself, is he crazy? How can the story go like this? The black-haired guy keeps trying to persuade Hani to join. If you join us, he says, the assignment will be considered a success. We're just doing what needs to be done. After listening to his rambling, Hani finally speaks. Look, it seems like you're up to something. The guy replies, honestly, we need your help. You suddenly switch to the magic kid side. So, we're facing a serious manpower shortage. Hani asks directly, the demon summoning. Was your project, wasn't it? Adel and Julia are stunned by this revelation. Adel looks at the black-haired guy and Hani, talking to each other, and thinks, demon summoning? What? Performing dark magic within the academy? The necromancy department is actually serious about this. So Adel couldn't help but wonder. She thought back. He was with Simon Parker and his cronies. Up until freshman year, Adel's eyes widened in realization. He was still involved with the necromancy department. Even after being assigned to the Saw Magic department, that dark magician you chased out of the newspaper club, was it all a ploy to make us lower our guard? She looked pleadingly at Han Siha, silently wishing, please Siha, tell me that's not true. Meanwhile, Han Siha was talking to the black-haired guy. He mentioned summoning a demon. He let out a sinister laugh. He looked like a villain straight out of a movie. He told the black-haired guy that the conditions for summoning a demon were very strict, but it's not impossible. I can help. The black-haired man said excitedly, you're finally on our side. I knew I could trust you. Hani lists the ingredients needed to summon a demon. Pig's blood, straw, and a yokai, a demon root, and a suitable environment. The black-haired man replied immediately, I've already prepared all of those things. I just came to get the environment. A confused Adel thought, what is going on? Why were they talking so familiarly with each other? She couldn't help but ask, What's going on? What environment are you talking about? The black-haired man smirked at Adel and said, I guess you don't know about such trivial magic. He continued with a sneer, the key to summoning a demon is a strong human who can receive the demon. He casually explained to Adel that, so you think we came here for nothing? To strengthen that dungeon boss monster? Adel gritted his teeth, fuming and wishing he could chew on that black-haired bastard's head. The man continued his rambling. For a summoning, a powerful mage is best. The black-haired man looked at a worried Julia and said, and if they're of holy descent, even better. Hana, understanding his meaning, added, so our team is perfect for the ritual. The black-haired man's face lit up. Hana, you're a smooth talker. He extended his hand. Now let's work together. Without hesitation, the black-haired man reached out to shake his hand. Their hands clasped. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning magic shot out from Hana's hand, electrocuting the black-haired man. He yelped in pain. He collapsed to the ground. He looked up at him, stammering, Why? His eyes landed on his hand, which was crackling with magical electricity. He roared furiously. What the hell are you doing? His face darkened. He pointed at him and said, You really want to shake hands with me? Clever plan, but you overlooked a few things. He smirked at him and continued. First, you trusted me too much. Second, you underestimated me. Hani slowly walked towards the dark-haired man. He angrily demanded, You dared to trick me? Dark magic emanated from his body. Thick purple auras pulsed around him. His face grim, he snarled, You were assigned to the magic department, and you dare to betray us? He launched a dark magic attack at him, screaming, Since it's come to this, I'll use you as a sacrifice. He retracted that powerful dark magic attack and launched it towards him with incredible speed. He couldn't react in time and took the full brunt of the attack, sending him flying backward. He thought in astonishment, how is his magic so fast? Seeing him crash against a tree, Adel rushed over in a panic, worriedly asking, Hani, are you okay? He grimaced in pain, unable to speak. He groaned in response to Adel. She ran to him and saw that he wasn't seriously injured. Relieved, she said, Thank goodness. He looked at her and thought, Adel, she's always the first one to come to me when something happens. It's really touching. He chuckled softly and said, You're worried about me? Adel replied, Of course. I really thought you were going to rely on dark magic again. She laughed, but it was a chilling laugh. Her voice dripped with menace. If that were true, I would have killed you. Luckily for you, you're not that traitor. He was terrified and couldn't say a word. He just forced a nervous laugh. He wondered if he should be relieved or not. She stood up and looked towards the others. It seems that lightning spell earlier didn't take him down. I think you're right. That attack was strong enough to knock out a normal person. I guess he's the main villain for a reason. Simon Parker is a character who will become as powerful as Lehon in the future. So, I have no choice but to give it my all. He turned to Adel. Adel, I need a favor. Please, hold back those necromancers targeting One and Julia. That guy just wants to beat me. Adel replied, Got it. Then, he ran towards One and Julia. The man laughed maniacally. He unleashed a barrage of dark magic. He struggled to defend against the attacks. The attacks grew stronger and stronger, shattering his magical barrier. He thought, Damn it, why is he so strong? He's not here to fight the likes of me. The man relentlessly attacked him. He asked, What are you thinking? He was sent flying by the blow. His wand gasped. My stick. Simon seized the opportunity and closed in. He grabbed him by the throat and said, You should really think about your current situation. Hana. Simon choked him, lifting him off the ground, and continued, You know too much about our plans, and you're becoming increasingly popular. In that case, eliminating you early might actually benefit us. He struggled to breathe, grimacing at Simon. He thought helplessly, It's not easy to go against the rules of the original story, and I knew from the start that I was no match for him. I could never beat him. But what if there was a small variable? For example, just a sliver of hope. Then Brazil made it a reality. It came out of nowhere, breathing fire at Simon, catching him completely off guard. As Simon turned around, Brazil unleashed another fiery blast. He screamed, I'm on fire. Released from Simon's grip, he clutched his throat, gasping for air. Then he looked at Brazil. Thanks, Brazil. Simon yelled at the furious dragon. He glanced at Brazil, noticing something different. He realized Brazil had reached level 10. A new skill had been unlocked. Skill acquired, Maya Spile summons a pillar of fire and lightning, simultaneously attacking all creatures within a 1-meter radius, excluding the user. He pondered, level up now? No. Then an idea struck him. Perfect timing, he exclaimed. He called to Brazil, looking directly into its eyes. Brazil understood, roaring in response. Together, they combined their power, creating a massive pillar of fire wreathed in lightning. World, stunned, exclaimed, fire and lightning. In the forest? Hana, are you crazy? Julia quickly conjured a shield, protecting herself and Adel. World shouted, if Julia hadn't acted fast, we're completely cooked. After combining forces with Brazil to unleash that massive spell, Hani collapses to the ground. He clutches his chest, thinking, I didn't expect that spell to drain so much energy. He looks at Brazil and thinks, moreover, it's not good for it to lose control. I can't handle Brazil's power. A figure emerges from the flames. Calling himself the Tamer, he says, I don't know about the others, but I won't fall for such cheap tricks. He struggles to his feet, thinking, how did that insect withstand that attack? The figure continues. Even if I die, Simon, with a stone-cold face, points his wand at it. I'll drag you down with me, traitor, he declares. He freezes, staring at Simon. Suddenly, a magic attack was launched. Simon collapsed, shocking him. He didn't understand what was happening. After Simon fell to the ground, a figure appeared behind him. He looked at the person in confusion. It was the girl with the mysterious blonde hair. He wondered, what's going on? The person in that cloak must be a student from the necromancy department. Why did she attack Simon? She sighed in relief, holding a glowing shovel in her hand. Phew, that was close. I'm not too late, she said. Good thing I brought this protective shovel. The girl took off her hood and tucked her hair behind her ear. Then she asked hesitantly, honey, are you okay? He recognized her, but his body was beyond its limit. His vision blurred. Seeing him like this, the girl worriedly ran to his side. You can't faint, Hanya, she said. What's happening to my body, he thought. The blonde-haired girl spoke to him anxiously. Wait, don't pass out. Hanya. And so, after exhausting all my energy in the dungeon, I fainted. The situation was quickly resolved. After the incident in the haunted forest, the club, the Dark Magic and Necromancy Club, was temporarily suspended. Meanwhile, IOL, Hyun Cruz, and the other teammates were given time to recover and rest. But what about the most important part? The group project results. As expected, our team, on the board, the professor wrote, Hanya's group, a perfect score of 100 out of 100. Hanya's group dominated. We became the only team in the class to get a perfect score from Professor Green. Adel excitedly turned to Hani. What? Seriously? Our team was the only one to get a perfect score. In contrast to Adel's joy, Hani was practically crying without tears, thinking, I didn't mean to stand out this much. The whispers started. So there really was a hidden item? Hani's team. Their determination is admirable, as expected from Hani, who even rejected the Han group. Hearing that, Hani muttered in exasperation. What rumors are they spreading now? Now what kind of rumors are going around? After those hectic days, I found myself in the Academy's underground prison. In the underground prison, he stood before a cell. At the cell, someone approached the bars and muttered, I heard someone was here to visit, so I came to check it out. He saw Hani behind the bars and said in surprise, What? He gripped the bars with both hands, leaned forward, and said with a smirk, Well, if it isn't Hungsi. He angrily shouted, Did you come here to see me cry in jail? Seeing his agitation, the other man said calmly, Easy there, Simon. He looked at him with a slight smile and said, You'll get out of here eventually, right? Simon gritted his teeth and said, Nonsense. The other man continued, Come on now. You're a nobleman. Do you think your father will just sit by while his son rots in prison? He paused, then added, Or maybe he will. With this incident, you might just get disowned. The more he spoke, the angrier Simon became. His face contorted in rage. He tightened his grip on the bars and yelled, Are you done yet? Simon's face crumpled as he asked, What are you doing here? Get to the point. I'll get straight to the point. He handed him a letter. Take this. He reached out and took the letter. Confused, he asked, What is this? He told him, Your father will soon come to get you out of here, because the only son of the family is about to disgrace the family name. He put his hand behind his head and continued, Your family is known for being ruthless, eliminating anyone who dishonors them. Who knows, you might end up in the same situation. Simon's face was filled with unease. Seeing that, he smirked and thought, In the end, You're just a scared kid. You're not afraid of dark magic, but you're terrified of being abandoned by your family." As Simon opened the letter to read, Hansua said, "Are you really that naive? If something happens, send this letter." Simon's hands trembled as he read the letter. She had continued, "It's a letter claiming that a dark magic organization is blackmailing you. Of course it's fake, but I added dark magic symbols strategically so it looks authentic." Simon grimaced, impressed and slightly disturbed. "Almost perfect," he explained to Simon. "With this, the story about the unfortunate necromancer student being forced to use demonic summoning will end. It'll be easier for your family to handle, right?" Simon asked, "Why are you giving this to me?" He paused, then asked, "Wait, where did you get this?" Sheila looked back. "Who else would it be?" He told Simon about someone at the academy willing to help him. Scene changes to a lounge. The principal asks, "Have you taken her there yet?" He lifts his teacup and replies, "Yes, sir." Smiling, he adds, "All thanks to your help, headmaster." He recalls the moment he woke up. Principal Ain called him aside and offered him an unprecedented reward. Unlike anything before, he was promised anything he desired. He responded. The principal looks at him and says, "When you asked for leniency for student Simon Parker, I was momentarily taken aback. I said I would grant you anything you wished for. But that student is the head of the Dark Arts Club and a key figure in this incident. It's not something that can be resolved with simple disciplinary action. Simply. However, it seems you see something else in him." He nodded in response to the headmaster. Simon Parker is the type of person who becomes stronger when fueled by revenge. He imagined Simon leaving the school, seeking retribution. He continued, "If we expel him, with mere disciplinary action, he might harbor resentment and turn to a darker path, using his demonic talent for more sinister purposes. However, if you show leniency and handle him appropriately, the dark magic spell will naturally dissipate, and Simon's exceptional talent can be steered in a positive direction." He spoke eloquently, but inwardly he thought, "Actually, I was just being cautious in case he came back for revenge." After hearing his explanation, the principal laughed and said, "Oh, so you also have the instincts of a teacher, honey?" Someone, upon hearing the principal, stood up and slammed their hand on the table, saying, "I thought so too. It was that blonde girl who knocked out Simon the other day and saved Hani's life. That girl's name is Natalie. In the original story, she's described as a bright and lovely student, loved by everyone in the school. Right before I passed out, she suddenly appeared with a shovel in the middle of the necromancer students. I was truly shocked. I wonder, what is her true identity?" he thought. She clasped her hands, let out a surprised "oh," and said, "Oh, right. I haven't explained yet." She told him everything. "Actually, I'm a sort of observer. The principal sent me to the Dark Arts Club." He realized, so that's why she was there. She's a spy. The principal stroked his chin thoughtfully and said, "It seems that the study of dark magic in the necromancy department has been somewhat neglected. Having a legitimate space for dark magic research is important to prevent students from misusing it." Out of curiosity, Natalie recounted her observations to him and the principal. Both listened intently, but this time, I really thought my heart would jump out of my chest. Apparently, the demon summoning plan was top secret, shared only among a few students, centered around Simon Parker. After entering the dungeon, I finally grasped the situation. She smiled and looked at him, saying, "If Sia hadn't helped me in there, I wouldn't have been able to fulfill my role. The students in the magic department wouldn't have escaped safely either." She sincerely said once more, "Thank you so much." He was praised by a beautiful girl, so he bashfully scratched his head and replied, "Well, I did it to save myself too." The principal suddenly thought of something and spoke up. "So, Sia." He was smiling from Natalie's praise, but he froze. The principal continued, "I have a proposition for you." He wondered, a proposition? It sounded like a big deal. The principal smiled brightly and said, "The International Magic Research Association wants you to represent ADN Academy." He startled, thinking in a panic. They found out about the plastic surgery. He tried to come up with a series of excuses to refuse. "I can't believe I was chosen to represent the academy. Headmaster, for matters like this, shouldn't we send our most outstanding students?" He thought to himself, "I'm getting stuck with these troublesome tasks. I have to get out of this." The headmaster said to him, "Haha, I thought so too. But did you know someone reported that? Someone reported that you made the greatest contribution in practical magic class. Professor Green Gave you extra credit. He thought in surprise. Extra credit? Even beyond a perfect score? The headmaster added. You're currently third in the magic department. He was speechless, completely shocked by the news. Currently, the #1 spot is held by Lehon, followed by Adel in second place. His jaw dropped. He couldn't believe he had climbed to the third position. Natalie, thrilled by the news, cheered and clapped for him. His mouth hung open in astonishment. He walked back to his room, mouth still agape. One, puzzled, watched him go. Suddenly, he let out a loud scream. One saw him furiously punching the wall and turned to Brazil, saying, "It seems your master has lost it. This is crazy." The creature, unable to understand his thoughts, shook its head. He cursed inwardly. I hate troublesome tasks, but now my rank has increased, and I'm getting even more attention. Second years, why aren't you studying? One, after hearing his story, said, Is this mess because of the upcoming competition? The wall where Hana took out his frustration has a hole in it. He replied irritably, I wasn't even aiming for third place. This is such a hassle. One exclaimed, Oh man, that's so unfortunate for Julia. She always holds the third spot. She'll be so sad if she finds out. Hearing one's words, he suddenly remembered and exclaimed, Oh, don't worry, Hana, I won't tell Julia. Instead, one promised, Why don't we open your personal rewards from the dungeon? To cheer you up? Hearing that, he turned to look at the box and thought, Right, the personal reward. I haven't had a chance to open it yet because I keep getting called away. He walked over, picked up the box, and continued thinking, Besides the hidden items, this is a personal reward for each person, for completing the dungeon. There has to be at least a little joy from this random draw in this wasteland. He eagerly opened the box. Others said they received some pretty good items. I wonder what I'll get. After all this trouble, maybe I'll get a top-tier item. He stared at the sparkling box, filled with anticipation. Please, please. One and Brazil stared at the box with their jaws dropped. Inside the box, there was nothing but an egg with blue veins. On the shell's exterior, the system screen displays a notification. Terra certification rank A. 100% guaranteed to hatch into the legendary para creature. He reads the notification aloud, then groans. If it's a para, he looks at the egg's birth certificate and yells. Another reptile? He laughs hysterically. Ha! One beside him chimes in, a legendary creature. You're a chosen tamer. He angrily snaps. Shut up, one. Scene change, a magic research conference, is being held in the Chanel Empire. It's a grand event with various lectures and exhibitions from the Mages Association, lasting 3 days. A place for intellectual exchange and harmonious discourse. Talented mages from many nations gather to share knowledge, especially during the inter-school competitions. It's a fierce battle of the honor of the country, and the school comes first. He sat wearily on the sofa, sighing internally. I'm starting to feel overwhelmed, and I hate it, he lamented to Adel. This year's theme is herbology. Adel stated, Hana, do you know anything about herbology? He asked back, Herbology? What? Adel chuckled, replying, Whoa, this is a big deal. When the principal saw us off this morning, he said, Participating as a learning experience is great, since this is your first research conference. But then he winked and added, It would be even better if you could bring home some awards. Adel said with a forced laugh. That's what he said. Lehon spoke up. If you understand the mixing methods, you'll be fine, right? We all took basic herbology in freshman year. As he spoke, he pulled a book out of his bag. Lehon smiled, handing the book to him. Don't forget this. For now, study this book. Until we get there, he thought, sweating a bit. He's such a model student, prepared for everything. Seeing this, Adel figured running away was the best option. She quickly said, I'll go out and get us some drinks. Annoyed, he thought to himself, Adel's running off again. Suddenly, Lehon called out, Hana. He turned around with a questioning look. Lehon scratched his face and said, The other day when One Jean and I came to your room, you showed us a map. Hearing that, he remembered and thought, I got it as a trophy from the Dark Magician at the World Tree. And Lehon happened to see it when he came to my room. Quite a coincidence. Lehon hesitantly asked, Do you still have that map? He replied, Yeah, it's in my dorm. It might be a bit dangerous there. Lehon repeated, I understand now. He remembered it when Lehon accidentally saw that map. His face went pale. The reason was the same as why. I personally participated in this troublesome event, even though I could have avoided it by pretending to be sick. A beautiful blue cube, covered in a magical shimmer. Even though the DNA Empire had an overwhelming number of light mages, why could dark mages caused such incidents and turmoil? At Soul Academy? It's because the dark mages gathered artifacts called cubes and scattered them around the world to turn the tides. The cube is a giant magic amplifier created by concentrating dark magic. It's a dangerous object that can turn an ordinary mage into an archmage. That's the explanation of the cube from the original novel. In the novel, a dark sorcerer secretly constructed a colossal tower and succeeded in gathering all the cubes. They planned to use the tower as an amplifier and channel near-infinite magic through the cubes to attack the world. Fortunately, in the original story, the main characters destroyed the tower and retrieved the cubes before things went too far. He recalled the original novel he read on his phone and couldn't help but shudder. In that process, not only side characters, but even some main characters died tragically. It was no wonder. The novel was considered a dark tale, and the place where the cubes first appeared was the Xenon Empire. All three of them had disembarked by now. Just as they arrived at the Xenon Empire, we went straight to the research hall. I was astonished by its magnificence. The place where we attended classes, including herbology, had a palpable tension between Adel's group and another group with a blue-haired guy. Han Xia's group. We've had a busy couple of days, participating in various activities. Fast forward 2 days later, I was stretching, getting ready for bed, thinking about the competition starting tomorrow. I flopped onto the bed, signed to myself. The headmaster said winning and the prize are great. But honestly, I'm not very familiar with herbology. We'll see what happens. I'll get some rest for now. While sleeping, I was roused by a noise. I saw a figure outside my door and called out, "Who's there?" Lehon was outside the window laughing. He said, "How did you know that?" "Impressive. I'm Lehon." He sat up, angrily saying to Lehon, "How could I not know with all that noise?" He opened the door, arms crossed, and asked Lehon, "Why through the window?" Instead of using the door like a normal person, Lehon explained, "Sorry, I was trying to contact you discreetly, but there's someone in the hallway." He asked in astonishment, "Someone in the hallway? How?" Lehon nodded. "Yes, someone released carbon in the hallway." Hearing this, Hana froze. He thought, "Carbon? You mean those are reconnaissance mages moving around in invisibility cloaks?" He said to Lehon in surprise, "Why would someone like that be here? That's not something a normal conference attendee would do." Lehon shook his head. "I don't know the details either. I didn't come here just to tell you this. I came here to ask you for a favor." Lehon asked, "The map you have, do you have time to explain it to me?" "Because inside it," he casually asked, "is it about the SAO cube?" Lehon, caught off guard, asked in surprise, "Oh, you know about the SAO cube?" Suddenly he reconsidered. "Maybe I should play dumb." Then he replied to Lehon, "The map mentions a cube, doesn't it?" He looked at Lehon and thought, yeah, Lehon must have known the true nature of the cube for a long time. A long time ago, Lehon's parents succeeded in sealing the cube's power, but they lost their lives to dark mages. The moment he saw the map, he must have realized that the dark mage was active again, and probably calculated the immense impact the cube's power could have on the world. Thus, the protagonist of the novel, Lehon, finally made his decision. He would continue his parents' will to search for the cubes and protect the world. Lehon spoke up, pulling him from his thoughts. He said tomorrow is the last day. The map says the cube is buried somewhere around here. Lehon tried to persuade him. "I have to find it before I leave here, so please give me the map." He coldly replied, "I don't want to." Lehon asked in surprise, "What?" "Don't worry, I'm not planning on using the map for anything bad." He circled the answer, replying, "Of course I know that. But Lehon, I can't give you this map, because the first cube is destined to be taken by the dark mage." I still clearly remember how much Lehon regretted it at that moment. His cries of despair echoed through every line. And if we lose the cube here, the story's difficulty will increase exponentially. "So, this time let's do things my way, protagonist," he said to Lehon with a smile. "I can't give you the map, but I can go with you." He sincerely pleaded, "Let me come with you, Lehon." Lehon said hesitantly, "I can't explain the details, but the cube is a dangerous object. I don't intend to drag you into this." He replied to Lehon, "I know. You never choose the easy or safe path. I don't know what the cube is, or why you're looking for it, but I won't be a burden, and I'm not giving you the map. It's mine. You don't have a choice." Lehon paused for a moment, considering his words. Then he finally made up his mind and answered, "Fine. A satisfied smirk spread across your face. Good. Lehon continued. In that case, remember this. We're going to win tomorrow's competition. Hearing that, you froze, your jaw dropping. Win tomorrow, you thought. Shouldn't it be next month? Ignoring your bewildered expression, Lehon went on. And after that, there's something we need to do. Silence fell over the classroom. Every student was speechless, not a single word uttered. Our trio was no different. One rested his chin, another stared into space. Lehon's expression was somber. Sia thought back to the previous night. Last night, Lehon told me about our mission. Lehon extended his hand and said, after we win the tournament, we'll infiltrate the magic department and steal the cube. Sia asked, the magic department? Yes. The map shows that the cube is in the third basement level of the magic department. Thinking of the iron chains and silver lock, Lehon continued, it seems getting into the magic department won't be easy. Security is tight, and access is strictly controlled. Sia stroked his chin. So, a direct approach will be difficult. There's only one way, Lehon replied. We have to win that tournament. It's the key. I heard that. The winner not only gets prize money, but also a chance to tour the magic department. I bet they won't let us see the basement, though. It's only for magic department personnel. Sia crossed his arms and made a bold decision. Well, why don't we just sneak in ourselves? Waiting for a response. Should I ask him again? Yeah, Lehon replied cluelessly. So, I have a suggestion. Sia, get serious for a second. What is it? Let's bring Adel with us. Sia continued, speaking objectively. If we're going to sneak in and get the cube, just the two of us isn't enough. But with 3 people, we might have a chance. Just like the saying goes, one tree can't make a forest. 3 trees together make a high mountain. Sia held up 3 fingers. He explained his proposal. Since the tournament is team-based, and the magic department tour is also for 3 people, would it be difficult to hide this from Adela? Lehon hesitated. That's true, but I'm a bit worried. It could be dangerous. Would Amelia agree? He asked. Sia calmly reassured him. Don't worry. If it's the Adela I know, she'll be thrilled to hunt down some dark wizards. Time passed. Finally, the day of the tournament arrived. I'm starting to feel a sense of reality again. Sia held his head in his hands, thinking, I'm so screwed. His face was pale with worry. I confidently brought Adela along, but I actually know nothing about herbs. But what can I do? I can only try my best. Sia consoled himself. He returned to the classroom. The students are chattering amongst themselves because of the man standing at the podium. Is that Professor Grope Miller? Yeah. I never thought I'd get to see him in person. He's the absolute master of herbalism. Professor Grope Miller smiles warmly and greets them. It's a pleasure to meet you all. I am Grope Miller. The professor begins his lecture. Not all magic is meant to harm others. There's also magic that can save lives. That is the essence of herbal medicine. He gestures with his hand. His voice becomes more serious. All right, enough of the boring stuff. Let me tell you about the tournament you've all been waiting for. Right? Professor Grope Miller begins explaining the tournament rules. It's quite simple. From now on, using your knowledge, you need to create something that has never existed before. A new kind of potion. If you receive a perfect score from all, the professor is judging you, you win. Those are the simple rules. At the table over there, 2 professors are smiling kindly at the students. The atmosphere becomes tense. Students chatter nervously. See? All the judges are talented witches and wizards. How are we supposed to create a potion that will satisfy those demanding professors? Sia has been deep in thought for the past 2 days. Every chance I get, I've been guided to gather 10 new ingredients for potions. I had a feeling something like this would happen, but this task is even harder than I thought. But Sia's expression becomes determined. Winning this tournament is the only way to get close to the cube. From a still-seated position, he started to roll his shoulders. I have no other choice. It's time to use my brain. A loud shout echoed. It was the voice of a girl. Sia, are you really a dropout herbalist? So it was Adela. She pointed at Sia and spoke nonstop. You barely know anything from the textbook. That Lehon showed you on the train. So, how do you plan to get a perfect score from those tough professors? Sia glanced sideways, feigning indifference. The professors drank a potion made by the DNA Academy team. Suddenly, the male professor felt extremely exhilarated. What is this? After drinking this potion, I feel incredibly fantastic. A powerful urge to create is welling up inside me. Then the female professor. Isn't this some kind of exciting enhancement potion? Wow. I want to do something right now. I'm a little lightheaded, but this is actually really fun. I feel like the kid inside me is coming alive again. Another professor commented, perhaps the potion they just took is a masterpiece. As their moods become more elated, their ideas begin to flow more freely, and they feel their basic magic activating more powerfully. So what's the name of this potion? The art potion? Really? I thought it would be something like the diamond potion or the royal elixir. That's right. Siha, with a mischievous look, poured something into the potion. I added a bit of alcohol to the potion. So that was the reason. Of course, it wasn't real alcohol. Just a small amount of herbs, used in the family's empire to create the potion's aroma. It's not practical, but it uniquely transforms elemental magic. They can turn it into something artistic. And with a little MSG to enhance the performance, Siha explains. Siha holds the potion bottle, speaking with the confidence of a seasoned salesman. It's been elevated into a grand spectacle, an explosion of creativity, a combat potion repurposed into something transcendental in a way so profound. The judges are impressed. How could they not be hooked? This is Sahan's true intention. The outcome is guaranteed to be beautiful, thanks to the rose-colored glasses. We've safely arrived at the magic department. As expected, standing before the magic department is the trio, along with Professor Brooke Miller. The professor, deeply impressed, remarks, it's been a long time. I'm so impressed with the creative potions from the students. It's truly delightful to witness such brilliant innovation from young minds. And with the grand prize being a tour of the Department of Magic, you all have the opportunity to expand your knowledge even further. Siha awkwardly replied, yes, Professor. Professor Miller led the three students, transforming into a tour guide as they walked. I'll continue the tour inside, he announced. This is the Civilian Affairs Office, where we assist with admissions and certificate registration for witches and wizards. This is where all the applications you submitted to the academy are processed. And Lehon trailed off with a bored sigh. Wow, truly amazing, Adela chimed in sarcastically. Siha screamed internally. Even if it's boring, she thought, at least put some feeling into it when you speak. The professor seemed delighted, his voice a bit giddy. You all are truly enthusiastic students. Next, I'll show you the lounge and the training grounds. The professor was completely clueless. But we don't have time to be stuck here any longer, Siha thought to himself. Siha quickly calculated in his head. He raised his hand to get the professor's attention and spoke. Excuse me, Professor. The tour has been very interesting, but could we take a short break? We're really tired. Ah, yes, quite right, the professor replied. The Faculty of Magic building is rather large. Just then, someone called out from afar, Professor Grook, could you help me with something? Oh, another professor is looking for me. Please wait here for a moment. With that, Professor Grook left, leaving the three children standing there. The three exchanged glances, their unspoken understanding instantly taking over. They quickly moved. Did you find the entrance to the basement? I confirmed it. Let's hurry. Lehon just reminded us that we don't know when the guards will arrive, so we need to be quick. We only have one chance. Whether we get caught or not, we have to find and retrieve the cube. The three silently made their decision. Soon, they reached the basement. Siha breathed heavily. It seems like we haven't been detected yet, right? He asked, looking at Lehon. Lehon nodded and called Siha and Adela closer. He held out a scroll and said, take this. It's a teleportation scroll. The two carefully examined the scroll in their hands. Lehon explained that most of the guards were concentrated on the fourth basement level, where the main vault was located. One of them, either Siha or Adela, asked, but there are only 2 scrolls. What about you? Lehon turned his head. This is the best I could do. I try to get more, but they're really scarce. He continued, Hani, you came here for Adela and me. You're here even though you don't know much about the cube to stop the Dark Witch. So, I should give these to you both. Lehon reassured his 2 friends further. As long as we don't get caught, it'll be fine. All right, shall we go? Something's glowing over there. Sahanez pocketed the scroll, thinking I'm a little suspicious. When did he get that? Adela urgently called out. Let's go together, Lehon. The 3 walked down the tunnel. In the distance, a blue light shone. It's a tunnel, Lehon said suspiciously. Let's get closer. Suddenly, his foot caught on a red string. The entire space suddenly turned crimson red. An alarm blared. Red lines appear on the ceiling, startling the 3 of them. I can't believe we triggered the alarm. The moment we got here, Adela frantically asks, what should we do now? We should leave. We're not even sure. If that's the cube, Sahan says with absolute certainty. No, that's definitely the cube. What? How can you be so sure? Adela asks. Sahan simply replies, as a blue screen appears. It's impossible not to know. Sahan stares at the holographic screen. Stage 9, the first 2 cubes. Retrieve the first cube safely. It's sealed in the underground vault. Time limit, 24 hours. Reward, difficulty, adjustment 7. Failure death. His attention was drawn to the lines of text. Retrieve it safely. Time limit, 24 hours. Reward, difficulty adjustment. 7 failures result in death. Blue screen. Content, episode 9-2. The first cube. Ensure retrieval. The first cube is sealed in the basement. Time limit, 24 hours. Reward, difficulty reduction. 7 failures result in death. Those words sent a chill down his spine. A deafening alarm blared, followed by a repeating announcement. Warning, intruder detected. Explosive magic will be activated around the basement for security purposes. The thunderous announcement made Sahan's face pale. He yelled, "What? Run!" As soon as he finished the word, a series of explosions roared. The entire basement was engulfed in smoke and flames. The sound of shattering glass. Perhaps that was the magic that minimized the damage to Simon. That damn explosion, he muttered, his face covered in grime. Wiping his chin, Simon wondered to himself, explosion magic. Almost died. Wait, are those footsteps? The thudding sound grows clearer. Yeah, it's... Simon was surprised to see who it was. Professor Diverse Bruno. He immediately thought, what's he doing here? Professor Diverse Bruno. He's a professor in the mathematics department at Adel Institute. Why is he in a place like this? Simon immediately started to explain. Professor, we just, got lost. The professor cut him off. No need to explain. Thanks to you. We've found the location of the cube. He said things Simon couldn't understand. What is he talking about? Don't tell me the professor from the DNA Institute is another dark wizard. That thought is truly terrifying. Professor Diverse continues. Such a grand plan to retrieve the cube. It's fortunate that I released carbon. So lucky, or accidental, that the students discovered the cube's location. His face suddenly turns menacing. His voice deepens. So, will you step aside, or would you rather die here? The blatant threat paralyzes the 3 of them. Purple bolts of energy shoot from the professor's wand. You've reached your limit, he says. Why not give up? A purple bolt strikes the shield in front of Adela. As Lehon moves to help Adela, Sahan quickly thinks, he's right. We can't defend ourselves. The power difference is too great. Luckily, I grabbed the cube before. The shelter collapsed, but escaping the professor with the cube is impossible. Indeed, behind his back, he held the paper-wrapped cube. Then I'll have to take a risk, Sahan shouted. Lehon. Lehon quickly grabbed the cube. Sahan instructed, take this. The scroll I gave you earlier and the cube. The orange glow within the paper was their target. Sahan yelled, take it and go. Adela frantically asked, what about you, Sahan? Hurry. Sahan didn't reply, only urging his friends. Go, Adela. Lehon hesitantly called out to Adela, handing her a scroll. Before leaving, the girl yelled, you bastard. You better come back safe. If those 2 left, only Sehun would remain. Professor Diverse approached him and said, you dare steal the cube right in front of me? You're quite the resourceful one, Han Lehon. I must commend you. Your plan to sacrifice yourself to save your friends is truly touching, but I can't let you get away. He chanted a strange incantation. Light. A purple light flashed from the tip of his staff. Chains wrapped tightly around Sehun, making him cry out. The professor said, it's possible we lost the cube, but you have the map that marks the location of the other cubes. Where is the map? Answer me. Sehun immediately replied, I don't have it. You have the wrong person. Diverse Bruno scoffed. You're just a kid. Are you so scared that you've lost your mind? No. Just how confident are you to keep running your mouth like that? Blood trickled down the corner of Sia's mouth, but he still wore a confident smile. What makes me confident? It's the trust between me and my friends. His words were almost a shout. Baek Shin, breathe fire. The dragon Baek Shin, seemingly out of nowhere, appeared behind him, its mouth wide open, energy accumulating. Following the intensely burning sound, the professor's exasperated scream echoes. Sia finally breaks free. The professor, clutching his head in anger, roars, that damn dragon. Sia is lost in thought. All right, before, Baek Shin injured me too. If I could kill this guy, but by myself. Sia struggles to make a decision. But for my own sake, I can't let him live. Damn it. Finally, Siha makes his choice. The scene shifts to the forest. Siha and Baek-shin are running. Behind them are men in black. They're almost here. 1, 2. Baek-shin counts. 2 more on the left, coming our way. Someone yells, "Don't let him escape." He's heading for the back gate. A purple lightning bolt shoots towards Siha, but it's blocked. Just defending and blocking isn't enough. Suddenly, his jaw drops, his face freezes. Blood trickles from his mouth. But I've used up all my mana. I can't. This is a desperate situation. Siha can't hold on any longer. He collapses to his knees, gasping for air. Damn it, the damage from that last attack was worse than I thought. At this rate, I'm dead. Despair begins to creep into Shia's mind. The men in black shout, "Target down!" Immediately, someone draws a bow and fires an arrow straight at Shia. His pupils shrink as he watches. The arrow flies towards him, and he can do nothing. At that moment, Baek-shin appears, shielding him. Blood splatters. Shia's face darkens. Baek-shin, the little dragon, is gravely wounded. Its face was filled with rage, its mouth breathing fire. A sea of flames instantly engulfed the area. The group panicked. A dragon. Damn it. He's a beast tamer. We have to take him down to kill the dragon. Get the beast tamer first. Shia held Baek-shin close, running as fast as she could. What do we do, Baek-shin? He's hurt because of me. Your dragon's in critical condition. Suddenly, a voice called out, "Hana, over here!" Adela. It was Adela. She was standing behind a bush. Adela sighed in relief. I think we lost them. You're safe now, Hana. This is a safe place. Adela's voice was filled with worry. I thought you were dead. Don't do anything reckless like that again. Shia put Baek-shin down. I'm sorry. It was all I could think of at the time. More importantly, Baek-shin is in critical condition. He was hit by an arrow trying to protect me. What? Siba. Shin in pain. It pains me deeply. My teeth clench after being hit. I should have treated him immediately, but I had to run away and miss the critical window. Even if it's a dragon, any creature pierced through the heart will die. It's only natural. He's in critical condition, and the situation seems dire. Unwanted memories, all too familiar, echo in my hand. Shia lost in thought. It won't work. Don't even try. Are you crazy? You'll ruin your reputation on the operating table. A flood of words from the past rushes in. People like to brag when they encounter a difficult surgery. If there's no hope, you should worry about yourself first. Go on, idiot. Those were the words that made him feel so discouraged in his past life. But thinking about the happy times he spent with Baek-shin, Sia didn't want to give up. I have to do something. He turned to Adela. He held out his hand and said, "Give me the revival potion you have, Adela." Wait. What are you going to do? Even Professor Girop can't save it. She handed the potion to Sia. He held it in his hand and said, "I will save it. This enhancement potion allows you to temporarily create something from nothing." Sia drank it. What he needed right now. He wiped his mouth. A tiny sliver of hope, at any cost, was a scalpel. As if returning to his past life, he said, "Same as always. Let's begin. I will save it." His determination was absolute. Will Sia be able to save Baek-shin? Han Sia used his magic, quickly performing emergency surgery on Baek-shin. A strange feeling welled up inside Adel. She didn't understand. She knew red dragons were rare, but there were plenty of other monsters to tame. She watched intently as he struggled to save Baek-shin, worry gnawing at her. In a situation where he barely had enough strength to care for himself, he was exhausting his magic, trying to heal a seemingly hopeless monster. She felt like an ant on a hot pan. Only one thought consumed her. I have to stop him. If something goes wrong, we could lose Siha too. But just then, Siha looked up and said seriously, "It's done." I retrieved the arrowhead, meeting his resolute gaze. She hesitated, seeing such determination in his eyes. How could she possibly stop him? Sia skillfully threaded the surgical needle. Now all that's left is to stitch up the wound. Moments later, after completing the procedure, he breathed a sigh of relief. He unconsciously recalled his past life. No matter how many times he tried, tens or hundreds of times, just standing outside the operating room would make his hands tremble uncontrollably. He couldn't even count how many times he ran away, until he couldn't even hold a scalpel anymore. But now, his once trembling hands moved with confidence. This was something he never expected. But in return, he felt incredibly relieved. It seemed he could save him after all. He covered Basie's body with a thin blanket and softly said, "It's done." Lehon's eyes widened in amazement. "That's incredible. You disassembled and patched up a dying dragon's body. Just to revive it? Is that some kind of unprecedented method? Could it be some kind of magic? I'm speechless. It's not magic. Adel carefully observed the dragon for a moment and found it truly miraculous. I didn't use any healing magic either. But the dragon's breathing has stabilized. The bleeding has also stopped. Good work. Seeing her reaction, I realized something profound. It seems that treating monsters with surgery instead of magic is quite foreign in this world. And because of that, I understand his surprise just now. In Basinu's condition, he should have been dead. He looked up at the distant sky. Without the combination of magic and medicine, surgery would have been a hopeless cause. Most importantly, if this were Korea, it would have been reported immediately for violating sanitation standards. The thought made him sigh like an old man. But this wasn't Korea. Bainu wasn't a dog, but a dragon. And he was no longer the Han Siha of the past. A tragic expression washed over his face. All of these things combined to create a single miracle. Suddenly, the system popped up. Notification. Healing light has been successfully applied. Binding conditions are in effect. He let out a dry chuckle. Then, he looked at the dragon, its breath shallow. A faint smile touched his lips. He whispered weakly, "Please live, Bachinus." Then everything in front of him turned white. He could faintly hear the horrified screams of Lehon and Adel. Hungsi! Hungsi! After losing consciousness, he woke up to a familiar ceiling. As far as he knew, he had been unconscious for several days, and was now in the infirmary of the DNA Academy. According to Adel, who had been watching over him with a worried look, he learned something else. The school had assessed the situation and dealt with the aftermath. However, it seemed they couldn't stop the rumors from spreading. Rumors that the DNA Academy's top students had been attacked by outsiders, and that it might be connected to the recent upheaval caused by dark mages. That rumor was pretty accurate, he said, impressed. He thought to himself, the adults must be having a hard time cleaning up this mess. It's okay, he reassured himself, because I'm not an adult anymore. But the carefree moment was short-lived. Lehon arrived, holding the cube, and said, "Many organizations are looking for this." He paused thoughtfully. The magic department, a few other academies. I'm not sure, but the dark mages are probably also searching for the missing cube. Adel suddenly clenched his fist. "We fought hard to get this," he declared. "We can't let it be stolen." He strongly agreed. "I concur, but—" he hesitated. "Tomorrow, there will be a trial regarding the incident at the magic department." See, his jaw dropped. "What?" He sighed wearily. "So it's come to this, huh?" But looking at the cube in his hand, he made up his mind. "It's in my hands now. I won't let them take this cube." 1 week later, at the magic department courtroom, a voice boomed like a loudspeaker. "I believe they should be severely punished." Louis McSun, a professor at the magic department, bristled like a porcupine. How dare those mediocre academy students break into the basement and steal an artifact belonging to the magic department? It's unacceptable. Milo tried to intervene. "Whoa, calm down. They're not the kind of students who would do something like that. There must be some misunderstanding." McSun shot back. "A misunderstanding? These days, does a misunderstanding involve smashing a safe?" Professor Grupp. "Professor," he said smoothly, "I already explained that this was an accident due to my own negligence. They're young. A warning and ensuring they don't repeat the mistake is enough." Maxon abruptly turned away, unmoved. "You have to address the root of the problem, Professor. You have to nip this in the bud, Professor." Then, he looked towards the 3 students standing on the platform. His voice was gruff. "I'll ask again. What did you steal?" Sia frowned slightly, and Doilmo quickly reorganized his thoughts. Since all items within the Department of Magic are kept confidential, no one besides the owner of the safe knows what's inside. In other words, even the Department of Magic doesn't know what was stolen from the safe. Therefore, our only strategy in this trial, it's quite clear. With no evidence, the best course of action is to deny everything. Thinking that, he spoke up. "We didn't steal anything. The safe broke open by accident." Maxon asked suspiciously, "An accident?" He calmly explained, "We got lost while trying to find our way out. We accidentally broke it." He jumped up furiously. "What kind of blatant lies are you making up?" He quickly addressed the judge. "Your Honor, the underground safe is completely empty." Then, as if afraid someone would interrupt, he continued in a rush. "There has been property damage and loss in the 3rd basement, and the only outsiders who had access to that area at that time were those students. What more evidence do you need?" The judge calmly spoke. In that case, we'll have to wait for the owner of the safe. He added slowly, we've requested their presence as witnesses. They should be here soon. Just then, someone pushed open the door and entered. The students, upon seeing who it was, began murmuring amongst themselves, no way, it can't be. How could it be? To everyone's surprise, it was Headmaster Ernie's. He chuckled softly and said, it seems our students have caused some trouble. Maxon froze and asked the headmaster, why are you here? This is a disciplinary matter. It shouldn't require your attention. This falls under the jurisdiction of the magic department. He countered, no, I must be here. He placed a hand on his chest and declared, I am the owner of that safe. Everyone shrunk back in surprise. That's right. Headmaster Ennis was the first to start collecting and sealing the cubes at the Soul Academy. But I didn't expect him to put them in the magic department's safe. Ennis spoke to the judge emphatically. The students went down there on my orders. I told them to follow the proper procedures, to retrieve the cubes. But it seems they got lost, and when they stumbled upon the safe, they rushed to bring it back. He narrowed his eyes, his gaze intimidating. A common mistake children make, Your Honor. He added, here is a list of the missing items and proof of ownership. The judge was sweating under his intense aura. The judge took the list and after reviewing it, confirmed, indeed. Maxon's face fell. He stammered in disbelief. How can the court just ignore him and deliver a verdict? Both the evidence and the owner of the lost items have been identified. There's no reason to continue the trial. Hana, Adel, and Lehon, these students will receive a level 7 punishment from the magic department. They will write apology letters and perform 30 hours of community service. Then he asked the three of them, do you have any objections? If not, this is the verdict. Max gritted his teeth in frustration, but he couldn't cause a scene anymore. Moments later, in the principal's office, a voice echoed, I won't ask any questions. Ernest handed a piece of paper to the person in front of him. Take this. Sia took it. Long was puzzled. Even though he knew the lost item was a cube, the principal dismissed it without asking anything. He was truly curious. What does Principal Onis know? He opened the paper the principal had just given him. A monotonous voice read the contents aloud. Professor Bruno, a mathematics researcher at the Adel Devers Academy, suddenly disappeared from campus to attend a conference. He continued reading, his voice still flat, and he never returned. A sudden unease washed over him. Onis's voice turned somber. The Academy bears a significant responsibility for failing to recognize Professor Bruno's true nature sooner. I won't deny my part in this, but I have a question for you. He asked pointedly, were you the one who dealt with him? Siha was startled, fear creeping into his heart. Onis pressed further. How did you survive? Seeing Siha's silence, he continued, your opponent was a professor. A normal second-year student couldn't possibly. There's no way to face him alone and survive. Flustered, Han Siha tries to explain it away. If I, as a tamer, managed to survive, it's thanks to someone else. Mainly thanks to my teammate, Bei-shin. It was just luck. Ernest immediately refutes him. No, Han Siha, you have talent. I sincerely thank you, sir. But he insists it wasn't just a compliment. I mean it. He looks at Siha intently. I'll soon know if I overestimated you. Once you decipher that note. Siha looks dubiously at the note filled with formulas. He holds it in his hand. This note, it seems to be a cipher. He states frankly, I found it on Professor Bruno's bookshelf. It's a type of cipher written in arithmetic, but I can't decipher it. After a moment of contemplative silence, the professor had a thought. Perhaps you could crack it. Siha felt a heavy weight settle on his shoulders. The professor was putting a lot of pressure on him. What if this is a cipher left by a dark mage, disguised as a professor? His mind raced. Could it be the location of another cube? He responded softly. Let me see. Ernie smiled, pleased. Yes, Han Siha, that's precisely the attitude I was hoping for. He carefully observed every flicker of expression on Siha's face. Faced with a seemingly insurmountable challenge, Siha's gaze remained calm. Your composure. As if it were nothing, it would make not only me, but anyone doubt you. In the classroom, Junhyuk and Lehon were chatting. She suddenly asked, so, how's the project with Han Siha going? He hesitated slightly. After all those suspicions, I still don't trust him, Lehon. He said slowly, Han Siha is still suspicious. Junhyuk, fiddling with a magic orb, asked in confusion, but you've asked me about Han Siha so many times, since the beginning of the semester. She smiled and added, Moreover, haven't you already shown Han Siha all your cards? What? He bristled like a cat. Who said that? Who said that? The orb on the table spun, emitting a soft glow. Junhyuk calmly replied, Bunim said so. He mumbled, defeated. Can't argue with that. He consoled himself. Fine then. I received clear guidance on the location of the cube. So, I guess, laying all our cards on the table isn't entirely wrong. However, he still insisted. But Han Siha's actions throughout the first year were very suspicious. He recalled Siha's gloomy demeanor in the past. His voice turned somber. It wouldn't be surprising if he turned into a dark mage at any moment. Yet, suddenly in his second year, he completely changed. Lehon felt a surge of complex emotions when he spent time with him. I'm starting to think that he might not be a bad guy. But if you ask me if there's a possibility of betrayal, that's a different story. Hyona, munching on something, interrupted him. All right. She swallowed contentedly and pulled down her veil, exclaiming cheerfully, So, you're asking me to double-check the prophecy about the warrior Han Siha to see if it's still the same? Don't worry, you've already helped by giving me bread, but I won't refuse a request from such a handsome guy. Okay, she suddenly recalled, and pay attention to the upcoming events. On campus, Lehon subtly reminded him. She grinned. This is a service to deliver fresh bread to me every day. He looked puzzled. Service? That last part? She enthusiastically replied. Exactly. Han put a finger to her lips conspiratorially. Punim just told me. Something super weird is about to happen. Meanwhile, in another classroom, a melancholic sigh echoed. Adel, holding a broom, lamented. 30 hours of community service. This is no joke. Siha meticulously wiped the egg in his hand, casually replying, Yeah? Her expression immediately turned demonic. Yeah, Han Siha, you should be cleaning too. Stop wiping that egg already, and give me a hand. Looking at the gleaming Peter Raider egg, he refused. No way. I heard that if you wipe it every day, it'll grow up strong and healthy. Suddenly, a voice interrupted them. Adel, Han Siha. One ran up, panting. Breaking news! Breaking news! Adel asked curiously. One, what is it? He was being vague, revealing the latest hot gossip that was shaking the whole academy. I ran all the way here to tell you guys. A room called The Monster of the Specimen Room has returned. Adel looked intrigued. Oh, really? This time it's real? He shrugged. I heard this time it's definitely for real. That's why Lily went to the professor's office. Siha pouted thoughtfully. The monster in the specimen room in the basement. If I remember correctly, the story started with someone screaming about a monster appearing in the specimen room. At first, people thought it was just a ghost story, another typical school tale. The students even whispered about this spooky story. A monster? Right here at DNA Academy? It wasn't some small creature either. I heard a student almost died, but in the end, there was no proof. So it was dismissed. Lily, who went to confront the professor, ended up just feeling embarrassed. Suddenly, a bright light appeared before his eyes, snapping Siha out of his thoughts. The system displayed, Target 9, 3 dragons in the specimen room. Time limit, until defeated. Reward, randomly encoded clue box, grade D2A. He knew instantly that the monster was real. A dragon's primary ability is cloaking. If it decides to hide, even the professors wouldn't be able to find it. Only certain students could see it, while others couldn't. It must have used its cloaking ability. One continued speaking intensely. It seemed Lily's visit to the professor had caused quite a stir. Even the students were starting to act strangely. Adel couldn't help but ask, what kind of strange things? He revealed, there's a rumor going around that the monster is a dragon. Siha smirked slightly. Wow, he said. That's a bold guess. One said with interest, that's a ridiculous story. But if they catch it, its hide and blood would sell for a fortune, right? Students are going crazy about forming hunting parties. He chuckled. Come on, it's just a rumor. Who would actually believe it and participate in such foolish acts? Or so he thought. But he was quickly proven wrong. Hearing the noisy bickering nearby, he ruffled his hair in frustration. Turns out there are more idiots in this school than I thought. At that moment, Durex declared, trust me, I'm serious. If we catch a dragon, we'll get extra credit. And maybe even skip straight to senior year. He added temptingly, isn't it worth a shot? Is there really a monster that 10 students like us can't defeat? Siha rested his chin on his hand, watching the idiot. A dragon isn't an easy opponent. Suddenly he shouted something. Startled, she froze. he asked excitedly. Want to join the hunting party? Hearing that, he sighed contemptuously. That damn Derek. His intentions were crystal clear. He stared intently at Julia. Think carefully. Will Julia really do it? She seemed to sense his gaze. Then, she quickly turned away, clenching her fists as if making up her mind. To do something, he remained supremely confident, thinking she didn't need the money or the points. But then, Julia said seriously, All right, I'll join. Siho was stunned, as if struck by lightning. His jaw dropped. What? A male student said awkwardly. Don't joke around. Any well-raised kid. Going on another hunting expedition? But she calmly replied, No, I'm serious. Sia found this world terrifying. Has everyone gone mad? In his memories, the dragon hunting group was mentioned in the original story. D-Rex and his friends gathered a bunch of foolish students for a reckless adventure. And that was it. He was absolutely certain that Julia wasn't part of that group. So what happened at the end of that episode? The image of a body lying in a pool of blood in a dark basement flashed in his mind. The ending in the original was that none of the hunting party ever returned.